Through Shenlan's environmental monitor, Herag could clearly see that there was nothing behind the door. No one. At all. Yet the entire house shook violently, and the pounding on the door only grew more intense. There were definitely people there just now, Herag thought. He had just seen them through Shenlan's scan, a man and a woman inside the house. At some unknown moment, the two had vanished without a trace. Herag hadn't sensed anything, and Shenlan hadn't given any warning about when they disappeared. Better to pull back first. After thinking it over, he decided it was too dangerous to linger. He turned away, planning to head back down the mountain road and leave. Tap, tap, tap. As Herag walked, footsteps suddenly echoed behind him. He halted. The footsteps stopped as well. Who's there? Herag turned and looked back. The road behind him was empty, and Shenlan showed no signs of any living creature nearby. Dark energy shield, mana shield, ice shield. He layered 3 protective spells over himself, feeling slightly more at ease. When nothing unusual appeared, he resumed walking. Tap, tap, tap. The footsteps followed again. This time, Herag could clearly feel that something was right behind him. There was even a faint breath brushing the back of his neck. But every time he twisted around, the path behind him remained empty. A 3-dimensional model of the surroundings floated in his vision. He checked every corner carefully. No second figure. No anomaly detected. He sped up, almost breaking into a run. The footsteps behind him sped up as well, sticking close, never falling behind. Something's wrong. Herag suddenly stopped, frowning as he took in the scene around him. When he turned, he saw the path leading down the mountain, and in the distance, at the foot of the slope, Heaven's Edge Canyon lay like a scar in the land. Why am I at the top of the mountain? At some point, he had ended up at the summit, where the houses in Valley Town were the most densely clustered. The house he had knocked at earlier had been halfway up the mountain, not far from the tavern. He remembered very clearly that he had been walking downhill. So how had he returned to the top? He stayed still for a moment, then tried again, walking downhill. When he passed that same house, it was completely quiet inside. No pounding, no movement. He made sure to take a wide detour around it. When he passed the tavern, the lights were still on inside, but the place was silent. Peeking through the window, he saw the butterbeer mug still sitting on the table exactly where it had been. Nothing had changed. Tap, tap, tap. The footsteps never stopped. Herag still couldn't figure out where the sound was coming from. Up to now, nothing had physically attacked him. It was possible the sound was just some twisted echo of his own steps. But the feeling of someone glued to his back wouldn't go away, and the cold breath on his neck kept coming and going. I definitely need to brush up on necromancy when I get back. I really don't have enough ways to deal with this kind of thing. Herag didn't panic. He guessed he had bumped into some sort of evil spirit or ghostly phenomenon. Necromancy was a massive field of knowledge in the wizarding world, and plenty of wizards specialized in it. Heaven's Edge appeared again in front of him. Just a short walk down, and he should have left Valley Town. Except, just as I thought, as expected, he was back at the mountain summit. He had no idea when the surroundings had shifted. He hadn't noticed anything change. The stars. Herag closed his eyes and sensed the positions of the stars overhead. The sky hadn't changed much. It looked almost the same as usual, and he could still clearly feel the familiar constellations. So the way down the mountain is a dead end. He turned and looked deeper into the town. There are no street lamps there, only the warm glow of lights from people's homes. But after everything that had just happened, he didn't dare knock on any door. He walked forward to scout other areas, and immediately the footsteps behind him started up again. The garden. He spotted a 3-story house ahead. Light poured from its windows, and he could hear faint voices and the sound of a violin coming from inside. There was a garden on the ground floor, facing the street. From a distance, the plants growing there looked strangely familiar to Herag. He slowed down and approached carefully. The footsteps behind him echoed in the stillness. The garden was packed with sunflower-like plants, their flower heads turned away from the street, making it hard to see clearly from outside. When he got closer, Shenlan's detection gave him a full image of the garden. So many demon flowers? Herag couldn't help but be shaken. The entire garden was filled with demon flowers, the main material for the Dawn potion, which he had only recently worked with as a troublesome potion ingredient. The footsteps behind him disturbed the demon flowers. One by one, they lifted their drooping heads, revealing seductive female faces at their centers. They smiled alluringly at Herag, their stems swaying in slow, sinuous motions like women's hips. Thanks to the dark energy shield, their charm had no effect on him. Without wasting breath, he pulled a herb shovel from his space ring, hopped over the fence, and started digging. With every thrust of his shovel, the demon flower in front of him began to cry out. The sound was strange. It wasn't a scream of pain, more like moaning. The expressions on their beautiful faces twisted into something even stranger. Herag loosened the soil around one of the plants, then grabbed its long roots and slowly pulled. As his hand wrapped around the roots, the entire demon flower trembled violently. Its cries grew louder, as if the root area was extremely sensitive. A moment later, the demon flower shuddered, its long roots going limp as it slumped against him. The expression on its face. Herag glanced at it once and frowned in disgust. He peeled the flower off his body, stuffed the entire plant into a space ring, and moved on to the next one. Demon flowers were highly valuable and could be sold for a good amount of magic stones. Herag didn't hold back. He planned to uproot the entire garden. Before long, the yard was full of rising and falling cries. When he was halfway through digging up the 16th plant, he sensed movement from the house. He turned his head. At some point, the window beside him had been pushed open. A woman's head was framed in the opening, eyes wide and unblinking, staring straight at him. On the windowsill sat a woman's head. Behind it stood a headless corpse. The corpse held a violin in its left hand and gently stroked the woman's head with its right. Herag stopped digging and straightened up, meeting the woman's empty gaze. The entire scene fell silent. All around him, the demon flowers closed their eyes and lowered their heads. The headless corpse lifted its left arm, set the violin against its shoulder, then raised the woman's head and slid it along the strings. Blood ran down the fingerboard and strings, stretching into thin, dark threads that wrapped around the instrument. The woman's head looked utterly entranced, eyes closed, lips curved in a soft smile, as if enjoying the melody. In Herag's vision, a dense mass of negative energy particles gathered around the window. He didn't hesitate. Corrosive arrow. 3 bolts of corrosive energy shot from his hand, slamming into the headless corpse. Wherever they hit, its flesh sizzled and rotted away. The woman's eyes snapped open, fury and pain twisting her face. Herag lifted his hand again. The ring on his finger flashed. Small fireball. A fireball formed and shot straight toward the window. The violin's music surged again. The corpse's right arm suddenly swelled, the pale limb twisting and ballooning into an enormous arm covered in red fur in just a heartbeat. The oversized limb looked grotesque on its body, bigger than the torso itself. The fireball struck the giant arm and exploded. Flesh charred black, and the air filled with the smell of burned meat. The violin sound didn't stop. The headless corpse swung the huge arm and drove a punch straight at Herag. The distance was too short. Herag had no time to dodge. The blow hammered into his 3-layer shield and sent him flying several meters before he crashed to the ground. He twisted his body as he hit, rolled, and bled off most of the impact, then sprang back up, drawing his longsword. The shields had held. He was almost unhurt. A quick glance at their status told him the outermost ice shield was heavily damaged. One more hit like that and it would shatter. Wind, Elf's Blessing. He activated another demonized item, feeling his agility spike by 2 points. Locking onto the corpse, Herag threw himself forward. The violin cried out again. The huge arm swung once more. This time, he had room to move, and with Shenlan's assistance marking angles and paths in his vision, he slipped past the blow with ease. The corpse was slow to recover after each punch. Its movements were clumsy, almost mechanical, and it took time to pull its fist back. Herag used that opening, rushed right up to the window and slashed at the violin. He'd already noticed that negative energy particles clustered thickest around the instrument. Every time it played, the corpse moved. The violin was clearly its control core. Steel met the violin with a metallic clang. Herag wasn't surprised. He'd expected it to be tough. He gripped his sword with both hands and started hacking at it with full force. Each strike rang out across the yard. The violin wasn't indestructible. Fine sword marks began to appear across its surface. Herag dropped his sword for a moment, grabbed the violin itself, and smashed it down onto the floorboards below the window. The music cut off instantly, but he didn't stop. Bang, bang, bang. He slammed it into the floor, the wall, anything he could reach, beating it like he was trying to crush a living thing. The noise was loud enough to pass for demolition work. He had no idea how many times he smashed it before he finally paused. The strings were snapped, and the body was cracked and warped. He tossed the violin to the ground and stamped on it for good measure. Corrosive arrow. Small fireball. He threw spell after spell at it, until the negative energy particles surrounding the instrument completely dispersed. Only then did he stop. Looking up, he saw the headless corpse slumped weakly against the windowsill. The giant arm had shrunk back to normal size, and the shredded sleeve exposed a pale, lifeless arm. That should be dead now, right? Herag glanced at the ruined violin on the ground and felt he might have gone a bit overboard. In the garden, the demon flowers slowly raised their heads to peek at him. When his eyes swept over them, they hastily turned away, as if afraid to be noticed. Satisfied that nothing else in the area was moving, Herag picked up his shovel and went back to work. There were still more than 10 demon flowers left. Soon, the garden was once again filled with those strange, breathy cries. Anyone passing by would probably think something indecent was happening in this open courtyard. About half an hour later, he finished uprooting every demon flower in the garden. In total, he'd collected 42 plants. He scanned the garden one last time and, seeing nothing else valuable, prepared to move on. The town was full of houses. This was just one home's small front garden. Herag walked back to the street, and the footsteps fell in behind him again. He was much more cautious now. Any house with lights on could be hiding something like the violin, or worse. Just because he dealt with that one didn't mean he could handle every cursed object in this place. Following the crooked street, he noticed something odd. The number of houses seemed to be growing. He clearly remembered that when he'd looked down from the mountainside, Valley Town hadn't had this many buildings. "Master, I finally found you," a breathless voice shouted from behind. "Robert." Herag turned and saw him running up, panting hard. "Don't come any closer." Herag raised his sword and pointed it straight at Robert's chest as he approached. Robert skidded to a stop, flustered. I'm sorry, that was rude of me. Master, it's really me. I'm not something pretending to be human. Where were you just now?" Herag asked coldly. Robert scratched his head, confused. "I'm not really sure. I remember we were drinking at the tavern, then suddenly you were gone. When I looked outside, the whole town was empty. I started searching, knocked on a door, and next thing I knew, I was inside the house. I panicked and tried to open the door, but it was sealed tight, like it had been nailed shut. I tried the windows too, but they were locked and incredibly sturdy. I couldn't break them no matter what. Then, just as I was about to lose it, everything spun and I was suddenly back out on the street. I saw you up ahead and ran over."
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Robert hurriedly explained, fearing that Herag might cut him down with a sword on a whim. Although he was a great knight, he had witnessed wizards in action more than once. He had no means to counter those eerie spells and could only allow wizards to have their way. Robert never considered counterattacking a wizard. He only thought about how to survive if Herag made a move against him. Herag carefully analyzed what he said, sensing that Robert wasn't lying. Yet he felt there was something amiss that he couldn't quite pinpoint. You said you were trapped in a house. Which one? Herag questioned. Robert glanced around, recognizing the nearby house for a moment, then said, "It's this house." Herag turned to look. It was also a 3-story building, with no lights on inside. He stepped back a few paces, distancing himself from the house. "Did you hear footsteps behind me?" Herag retreated a few more steps, and the footsteps followed. Robert's expression was somewhat frightened. "I heard them, but I didn't see anything behind you. I think something has set its sights on me." Herag sighed, a bit helpless. He glanced at Robert. "We'd better leave here quickly. There's something wrong with these houses." Robert had suddenly entered after knocking on the door and couldn't come out no matter what, and Herag guessed it would be the same result if he knocked. What puzzled him was why Robert came out inexplicably without doing anything, just in time to encounter him passing by. Herag noticed his surroundings suddenly lit up. The house beside them suddenly lit up, emitting a soft yellow glow from the windows. Herag tried to look inside through the windows, but could only see a field of yellow light. Shenlan's scan showed that the entire house was empty. Of course, Herag didn't believe there was truly nothing inside. Shenlan couldn't detect non-living entities like evil spirits, a conclusion he reached from past experiences. He believed it was due to his own lack of knowledge in this area. So Shenlan didn't have effective detection methods to discover the presence of evil spirits. At the same time, Herag felt that Shenlan was no longer an ordinary gene chip from a previous life. As he became a wizard and his strength grew stronger, Shenlan's functions gradually began to change, becoming much more powerful than a typical gene chip. "Go!" Herag growled at Robert, then dashed out first. The moment the lights came on in the nearby house, a sense of malice assaulted him, and he figured whatever was inside would be troublesome, so he wanted to flee immediately. Seeing Herag's urgency, Robert also realized the seriousness of the situation and quickly followed suit. Where did he go? Robert suddenly found that Herag had disappeared after running a few steps ahead. Robert looked around, unable to find any sign of Herag, and a chill surged through his heart. After running a few steps, Herag found himself inside a house. He surveyed the surroundings to confirm he was on the first floor. Herag walked to the window and looked out, seeing Robert standing outside, looking around in confusion. By observing the street scene outside, he confirmed that he was in the house that had just lit up. Herag checked the doors and windows. The window locks could be opened, but no matter how hard he pulled, the windows wouldn't budge. Bang! He picked up a chair and smashed it hard against the window, but it didn't move an inch. Herag tried hacking at it with his longsword, but not even a scratch was left on the window. Seeing this, he temporarily gave up trying to break the window. Herag went to the door and found that it wasn't actually locked. The doorknob could be pressed down, but the door just wouldn't open. No matter how much force he used, he couldn't open the door. After trying for a while, Herag gave up, not wanting to waste his energy. It was clear there was no conventional way out. Outside, Robert occasionally glanced inside, but he didn't seem to see Herag, though Herag could see Robert from inside. "Looks like I'm in the same predicament Robert was in. He inexplicably came out back then. Where are the hidden rules?" Herag began to ponder. He glanced at the room's furnishings. It was just an ordinary residential home with nothing special. Herag wandered around the rooms on the first floor. The first floor consisted of the living room and kitchen. What's on the second floor? Although Shenlan's scan showed the second and third floors were empty, that didn't mean there weren't other things present. He cast 3 shields on himself and began to ascend the stairs. The entire house was pitch black, and Herag relied on Shenlan to see the interior. Though the lights had just come on, Herag saw that there wasn't a single lamp on the first floor. As Herag ascended the stairs, the footsteps behind him continued, the rhythm of 2 sets of footsteps following each other closely. Just as he reached the second floor, he stopped in his tracks. In the middle of the second floor was a dining table with a plate on it containing a human arm. Judging from the wound on the arm, it had been forcibly torn off, still dripping blood, clearly freshly torn. Why does this hand seem so familiar? He looked at the arm, feeling as though he'd seen it before. It seemed familiar. Herag approached a bit more, noting the neatly placed knife and fork beside the plate, while the chair was slightly askew. It seemed as though someone had just been sitting there about to eat, but had suddenly left due to some matter, not even having time to put the chair back in place. Herag didn't touch the table or the arm and continued on to other rooms on the second floor. Soon, he found a bedroom on the second floor with a large leg hanging by the second floor window, blood still dripping down, creating a puddle on the floor. In the bedroom, Herag found some items that appeared to belong to an ordinary resident's bedroom. A family photograph. On the bedside table, Herag found a family photo. It showed a family of 3, a couple and a young daughter. But strangely, the 3 people in the photo had no faces. Their facial features weren't blank spaces but absent, just a flat facial surface. The room was very quiet, with the sound of dripping blood, drip, drip, clearly audible. Herag looked back at the leg again. The arm had no clothing, but this leg had tattered fabric hanging on it. It looks like Robert's pants. Recalling the fabric hanging from the leg, Herag noted it looked very similar in color and material to the pants Robert was wearing. But wasn't he outside? Herag recalled the arm on the dining table outside, suddenly realizing that it looked a lot like Robert's. Because of using a dagger for years, Robert had noticeable marks on his hand. No wonder it looked so familiar. When Herag saw that arm earlier, it felt familiar, but he didn't connect it to Robert right away. He had just seen Robert out in the street from the first-floor window, so how could he be dismembered in an instant? Herag put down the photo he was holding, didn't touch the leg, and turned to leave the room. The arm on the dining table was still there. Herag glanced at it as he passed by and then left. He continued to the other 2 rooms on the second floor, where he also found a hand and a leg. There were also some photos in these rooms, both group photos and solo ones. Without exception, they all had no faces. Herag strolled through the second floor, finding nothing else, so he went up the stairs to the third floor. He recalled that outside, he remembered the third floor should have an attic-like structure. Upon reaching the third floor, Herag found it was indeed a low attic where you had to walk slightly bent over to avoid hitting your head. As he bowed his head, he noticed something and stopped. On the floor was a long trail of blood, extending all the way to the windowsill at the far end of the attic. Following the blood trail with his eyes, Herag found a severed head placed beneath the attic window. Robert, he carefully identified the face. There were several terrifying wounds on it, making it almost unrecognizable. Herag observed for a while. The wounds looked like they were made by an axe, very deep. The skin and flesh at the wound had rolled back, exposing the white bone underneath. Did you die so tragically? Herag scratched his nose awkwardly. After all, it was him who asked Robert to lead the way, and now that Robert died so horribly, he felt somewhat guilty. Dying in such a place, Robert's remains couldn't even be taken out. I should think about how to get out of here. Herag shook his head. He was in danger himself and hadn't found a way out. If the dead Robert were real, then he probably wasn't far from danger himself. Despite being a strong great night level, Robert was silently taken out. Herag scanned the attic, which was full of clutter, nothing else. He was looking for the axe, the murder weapon used on Robert, but so far he hadn't seen it. After searching the attic for a while and finding nothing, Herag started heading downstairs. He had been all around the house, but found nothing else. If Robert is dead, then part of his body is still missing. Where did it go? Herag was puzzled. Thinking as he descended the stairs, he returned to the first floor. Herag went to the window to see if Robert was still outside, but as he approached, he found a face pressed against the window. Robert was pressing his face against the window, looking hard inside, seemingly searching for Herag. Bang! 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 Suddenly, a heavy banging sound came from upstairs, as if someone was hitting the door with something heavy. A chill rose in Herag's heart, as he clearly felt a huge threat from something upstairs. I have to get out of here quickly. His heartbeat quickened, and the feeling of impending doom grew stronger. The banging from upstairs abruptly stopped, and the house became quiet again, yet Herag felt a sudden chill around him. He turned to see a little girl on the stairs leading to the second floor, wearing a red plaid dress, holding a doll quietly. The girl's face, like in the photos, was featureless, but Herag could feel her gazing at him. She's smiling. Herag suddenly felt that the little girl was smiling at him. Then, suddenly, a mouth appeared on the girl's featureless face, revealing white teeth with some red filaments between them. Herag felt no warmth from this smile, only a chill down his spine. In his hand, fire elemental energy particles quickly gathered, and a small fireball technique was about to form. The little girl seemed not afraid at all, showing a horrific smile as she gradually walked down the stairs towards Herag. At this moment, Herag noticed that the doll in the little girl's hand was also a resentful doll. Could the resentful doll in my space ring have come from here? That wizard got this thing, but died outside of Valley Town. Herag noticed the resentful doll in the girl's hand. Although its appearance was different from the one in the space ring, both were top-level curse technique casting materials. But now he had no time to think about acquiring the resentful doll. His mind was racing to figure out how to escape. Just then, there was a noise at the door. The sound of a key opening the door came from the entrance, causing the little girl to stop in her tracks. The key inserted into the lock, and then turned with a click, and the door opened. A big bearded man stepped in with an axe hanging from his head. The axe was embedded in his forehead, deeply cleaving into his head. Yet he seemed unaware, and upon seeing Herag, showed a delighted expression. "It's you. Thank you for treating me to a butterbeer." "Blacksmith uncle?" Herag was taken aback, surprised to see the blacksmith uncle he had met at the tavern. But now the blacksmith uncle was clearly different from when he met him in the tavern. Besides the axe in his head, his eyeballs had turned a pale gray. His facial skin was also abnormal. The blacksmith uncle looked anxious, as if he recalled something, and urged Herag to leave quickly. Herag nodded and walked to the door, turning back to ask, "Blacksmith uncle, do you know how to get out?" The blacksmith uncle paused, thinking for a moment with a pained expression. Holding his forehead, he said, "I've forgotten a lot, but I know if you stay until dawn, you'll be able to leave. Most importantly, stay away from these houses. Don't get close." "Ah!" He clutched his head in pain and squatted down, as a large lump suddenly bulged out from his back, unknown what it was. Seeing this, Herag turned and ran, closing the door behind him. Bam! The next second, a loud noise came from behind the door, and Herag felt the entire street tremble. "Robert!" Herag glanced around, but didn't see Robert. He remembered clearly that Robert was just outside the window, but was gone when he came out. Could it be that he was frightened away by the blacksmith uncle? Herag suspected that when the blacksmith uncle opened the door, Robert must have run off after sensing the danger, considering it's impossible for a living person with an axe in their head to open a door like nothing happened. He couldn't be bothered to worry about Robert anymore, hoping that Robert would have good luck to escape this ordeal. Herag glanced down the mountain, which had already been proven to be inaccessible, so he turned and ran north where there weren't any residential houses. Since the blacksmith uncle advised staying away from houses, there must be a reason. Herag's own experiences also confirmed that there was indeed something in each of these houses, and none was easy to deal with. However, there are indeed many good things here, a whole garden of demon flowers, and a resentful doll in the little girl's arms. These are all valuable items. Herag sighed, still lacking strength. If he were strong enough, he'd simply snatch the resentful doll from the little girl's hands. Daring her to resist would earn her a punch. But for now, he could only flee in defeat. Once again, Herag employed the Wind Elf's blessing to hasten his escape from the town's residential area. While he was running down the street, as he passed each house, the lights would turn on, followed by various noises. Herag neither looked nor listened, charging headlong to the north. Once he successfully escaped the residential area, he realized he was drenched in sweat, unsure if it was from fear or exhaustion. The malice emanating from those houses exerted immense pressure on him, creating a sensation of confronting death itself. To the north was a small grove and some cultivated fields. As Herag arrived, a gust of wind blew by. The breeze brushed against his face, making him feel much more at ease. He sniffed. This smell, seems like the fragrance of dragon's beard grass. Dragon's beard grass is a valuable magic potion material, used in the creation of various high-tier potions, among which the most famous is called the Earth God's Favor. The Earth God's Favor can greatly enhance a wizard's earth element affinity over a short period, with a broad range of uses. If an earth element wizard uses it during advancement, it can significantly increase their success probability. Upon consuming the Earth God's Favor, when using earth element spells, the effect greatly improves, as if the surrounding earth elements serve you, requiring only a bit of magic power to mobilize a lot of earth element power. This kind of high-tier magic potion material, much like the Resentful Doll, is extremely expensive. Herag wasn't sure of the specific price, as he had no previous means to engage with such items. Now, as Larry's student, he could sell these to Larry. The price could be lower, but the safety is assured. Larry himself would face no issues selling these items on the market, as owning such items is normal for an official wizard, allowing him to earn more from the price difference. The Resentful Doll and the Space Ring. Herag planned to sell it to Larry later. He didn't specialize in the curse technique, so he had no chance to use it. Herag glanced at the distant fields, which were planted with many crops. As he got closer, he saw that the outer fields were planted with a good amount of dragon's beard grass, making Herag's mouth water. Herag cast 3 shields on himself, then began carefully digging out the dragon's beard grass with a shovel. The stamens of the dragon's beard grass have a long, thin red tongue, which is somewhat aggressive, capable of piercing several holes in a regular person with no problem. But to a wizard apprentice like Herag, 1 shield was enough to defend against the dragon's beard grass's attacks. Herag squatted in the field, with the surrounding dragon's beard grass frantically poking him with their tongues, the tongues hitting the shield sounding like pitter-pattering rain. After about half an hour, Herag dug up all 7 dragon's beard grass plants from the field. The quantity wasn't as much as a demon flower, but their value far exceeded it. The adjacent fields were also planted with many magic potion materials, many of which Herag couldn't name, having only studied the basic introduction to herbalism and not yet taken more advanced courses. He even worried that his digging method might be incorrect, potentially damaging some magic potion materials. But since he was already here, he couldn't just leave it. Even if some were damaged, it was unavoidable. Herag moved to another area with a shovel, slightly increased his speed in digging these magic potion materials, while concentrating his spiritual power and staying vigilant of the surroundings. He hadn't forgotten where he was. It was a creepy place where danger could appear at any time. If he became too engrossed in digging magic potion materials, he might not even notice when danger approached. Another hour or so passed, and Herag was still digging up magic potion materials. Looking up, he saw the field was extensive, with no way he could dig it all up overnight. There were just too many magic potion materials. Did someone plant these? Herag was a bit confused since these magic potion materials seemed deliberately cultivated. Because many magic potion materials were classified by type in different fields, and the planting areas were neat and organized, completely unlike wild growth. If it was artificially cultivated, it must have been done by a wizard. To cultivate such a large area of magic potion materials in a place like this, the wizard must be very powerful. It seems that the wizard isn't here now, or else I'd be in big trouble. Herag felt a bit apprehensive, thinking that if the wizard happened to return now, he'd surely be in for some serious consequences. I'm just picking up, not stealing. He comforted himself. Shenlan, how long until dawn? Herag asked. About an hour and a half, but due to the special environment, it might not be accurate, Shenlan replied. Here the environment is special, and Shenlan could only provide time estimates based on normal patterns. But everything here is filled with mystery and uncertainty. Even if the sun rose from the west, Herag wouldn't be surprised, as the sunrise time couldn't. Herag thought more and more that this place might belong to a wizard or a wizard organization. The magic potion materials in these fields and the things in those houses are likely raised by wizards for long-term acquisition of magic potion or casting materials. This place is under the jurisdiction of the Aluf Swamp, Could it be their people? Herag speculated. He sighed, realizing that thinking about it was meaningless. Although a luff swamp had a good relationship with Moonlight Forest, it didn't really concern low-level wizard apprentices like them. If they were meant to be killed, they would be. Herag stood up, glanced at the surrounding magic potion materials, and began to pick and dig some high-tier magic potion materials. There were many he didn't recognize, but he had his methods of identification. That was energy particles. High-tier magic potion materials usually had more energy particles, which was a small method to identify the level of magic potion materials. About half an hour later, Herag heard some noise from afar. He crouched in the fields and raised his head, quietly observing the place where the noise originated. It was a piece of flat land there, completely barren, not even a single blade of grass. The ground suddenly cracked, and something arched up from underneath. A massive white bone burst out from the earth. Roar! A loud elephant call came from underground. The large bone hadn't yet revealed its full form and was continuously arching upward. Soon, Herag finally saw the complete form of that large bone. It was a complete mammoth skeleton, as high as a 3-story building. At the head of the mammoth skeleton, a green flame was burning fiercely inside. Herag knew what this was. It was the soul fire of this mammoth, indicating that it was an undead creature. I've always felt the term undead creatures is rather awkward. Herag thought it might be a translation issue, as creatures in Chinese means living beings, but in this language, it didn't mean the same. Does having a soul count as being a creature? Herag didn't have time to ponder this question further, because the mammoth had already turned its head and was looking at him. He knew he'd been discovered and immediately cast a wind elf's blessing on himself and ran back. The mammoth followed closely, and the scene that followed was unexpected for Herag. The mammoth was initially fast, but when it approached the field, it stopped and gently stepped on the vacant land that wasn't planted with magic potion materials. It seemed to know not to step into the fields. However, the paths between the fields were narrow, very narrow for the mammoth, which made it unable to run at full speed and forced it to tread carefully forward. This speed was naturally impossible to catch up with Herag, who seized this opportunity to speed up. He observed the distance and chose a direction to sprint. Hope I don't encounter the situation over the mountain foot. The only thing Herag worried about now was if he suddenly appeared somewhere else while running, especially if he ended up right next to the mammoth, then it would be a real mess. The strength of that mammoth was at least several dozens. At this level of power, no shield would be useful. It could stomp through with a single step. After Herag crossed the field area, there was a small forest ahead, mostly pine trees. He slowed his pace, as everything here required caution, especially when entering a new area. So many spider webs? Herag looked serious and first cast 3 shields on himself. The pine forest was covered with a large range of spider webs, with the ground almost filled with white spider silk. The fact that such a large area of spider webs was woven indicated that this spider must be of the demon level, usually very troublesome. Roar! The mammoth's call from behind drew nearer as it tread down the narrow paths, its gaze fixed intently on Herag. No, I can't go into this forest. Herag ran to the side. Under no circumstances could he enter this pine forest. Although the mammoth was chasing, the things inside could potentially be more troublesome than the mammoth. Running to the side risked being caught by the mammoth, but venturing into the forest would surely result in being caught between the demons inside and the mammoth, ensuring certain death. Herag took a deep breath, once again picked up speed, ran to the right of the pine forest and circled around it. The mammoth drew closer and after a while finally got out of the field, immediately speeding up and knocking over a large area of pine trees. At the same time, rustling noises came from within the pine forest, the sound dense. Herag turned back to glance and saw a mass of spiders crawling out of the pine forest, each more than a meter long. He realized this was a spider colony, and these spiders were just small ones. Deep within the spider nest, there was usually a spider queen, larger and more powerful. The poison and silk of this kind of spider queen seemed to be precious magic potion materials, Looks like it's also kept by some wizard. Seeing that the spiders weren't coming for him, Herag felt a bit relieved. It's good I slowed down when passing by. If I had alarmed these things, there'd be nothing left of me to even chew. He looked at the countless spiders, feeling a bit frightened. The spiders from the pine forest rushed out, all swarming toward the mammoth. The mammoth, all bones, stepped on and killed a spider with each foot, its two gigantic mammoth tusks sweeping and killing a swath of spiders. But these spiders seemed endless, continuously emerging from within, more and more. Spiders soon covered the mammoth's body, causing it to run around the pine forest like a headless fly. The ground was filled with spider webs and green spider pulp everywhere, spilling out from the trampled spiders. Herag had no time to continue observing their battle and ran forward without looking back. A loud crash came from behind, accompanied by the mammoth's wailing. Herag glanced back while running and found the mammoth had fallen, wrapped in spider silk. Initially, many of the spider silks on its body were snapped by the mammoth, but breaking one was followed by tens of thousands more. The strength and toughness of these spider silks were extraordinary and soon enveloped the entire mammoth. Then, the horde of spiders dragged the mammoth into the depths of the pine forest. Can they even eat bones? Herag couldn't help but sneer. It seemed these spiders had hunted the mammoth as prey, wrapping it in webs as a stored food source. Just as he was sneering, these spiders suddenly halted their movements in unison. They began severing the spider silk connecting the mammoth, then turned around uniformly to face Herag's direction. Oh no, you've got to be kidding. A strong sense of crisis overwhelmed Herag. Evidently, these spiders had received some sort of command, possibly from the Spider Queen behind them. He understood his position had been exposed, and the target of the spider swarm had become him. As the saying goes, many ants can kill an elephant, and these aren't ants. They're gigantic spiders larger than humans. Even with Herag's thick shield and abundant magic, these spiders could eventually wear him down. Hearing the rustling noises behind him, Herag felt a chill down his spine and pushed his speed to the limit. The scenery around him blurred into a backdrop. His footsteps remained steady. With the aid of Shenlan's detection, he ensured that each step was firm, avoiding any accidental slips or falls. However, these spiders were faster than Herag expected, scuttling across the ground at an alarming pace. Additionally, the number of spiders was overwhelming, forming a vast sea of spiders spreading like a tidal wave. The swarm of spiders was nearly forming a ring around Herag, threatening to encircle him soon. This must be directed by the Spider Queen. Through Shenlan, Herag gleaned insights about the scene behind him. The spiders' tactics, from initially hunting the mammoth to collectively abandoning it, and then chasing him while forming an encirclement, all indicated someone was directing them. With so many spiders, only the Spider Queen and their lair could simultaneously issue commands. The spider swarm is closing in fast, and in 3 minutes, the encirclement will be complete. Shenlan issued a warning. As he ran, Herag scanned his surroundings. I must find a place to take cover. Blindly running forward spells certain death. The spiders were too quick. Continuing straight would result in him being inevitably surrounded. Spiders covered the mountains and plains, making Herag's head spin. There's a cave there. Sweeping his gaze around, Herag quickly spotted a cave to his left. Although entering might not guarantee safety, not entering surely meant death. With no other options, Herag dashed towards the cave and squeezed inside. Inside, he glanced at the surrounding earth, noting its extreme hardness. Initially, Herag intended to collapse the cave entrance to somewhat impede the spiders. But feeling the rock-hard cave walls, he had to abandon that plan. The sound of spiders crawling, like a death toll, prompted Herag to venture deeper into the cave, hoping to find an escape route. Even an underground river would suffice. After entering, the spiders swarmed outside overwhelmingly. Oddly, every spider squatted at the cave entrance, not daring to enter. Countless spiders crouched there, their 8 eerie green eyes fixed intently inside. Once inside, Herag found total darkness, so he retrieved a lantern from a space ring, activating it to emit light. The lantern's light source was a type of mineral, with a small magic array at the base that, when switched on, absorbed a small amount of fire energy particles, causing the mineral to glow. Upon turning off the switch, the mineral would continue to glow for a moment before gradually dimming. Herag also took note of the spiders outside. Shenlan provided real-time updates of the situation. He pondered, why don't they dare pursue inside? Could there be something more terrifying in here? Or is this place forbidden to them? He recalled the scenes of the mammoth passing through the fields, where the mammoth, spiders, and those mysterious entities in the town's residences seemed to obey certain rules. For instance, not disturbing the magic potion materials in the fields should be one of the rules set by the wizards overseeing this place. Lighting the lantern, Herag noticed numerous murals on the cave walls. The mural lines were simplistic, nearly primitive, as if drawn by a child of 3. Yet these murals caused Herag to frown. This certainly dates back quite a bit. Holding the lantern, he proceeded, discovering the murals spanned long sections, conveying a continuous narrative. After viewing them all, Herag comprehended the story. Though crude and blunt, the murals clearly conveyed their meaning. Essentially, the indigenous people here constantly battled with various beasts, losing many lives daily. One day, a messenger of the gods descended, bringing them a stone slab. From the stone slab, the indigenous people acquired extraordinary power, effortlessly defeating the wild beasts. With the ease of acquiring food, the tribe expanded rapidly, and people began living well-fed and warm. The stone slab, a thought flashed in Herag's mind as he concluded the murals. Suspecting the spiders outside feared intrusion not due to a more formidable presence within, but rather a binding rule preventing their entry. I should look for other things. He proceeded onward. The ancient cave might hold hidden treasures. Yet he considered that, if the spiders were indeed under the wizard's care, he might only scrape the surface, but drinking a little from the pot would suffice. What do so many spiders feed on daily? Even with abundant wildlife nearby, it wouldn't suffice. Could there be another energy source? The thought struck Herag. Given the colossal spider numbers, they would likely decimate any local wildlife anywhere. Keeping such numbers fed would be impossible for any ecosystem to sustain. But this was a world rife with extraordinary power. Herag speculated that instead of conventional hunting methods, the spiders likely had alternative energy intake methods. After traversing a ways inside, Herag noted the cave's expanding width. On the way, he encountered some statues, which he thoroughly inspected. They were merely ordinary stone carvings, devoid of any special energy. Within the cave, just one path existed, with no other branching routes. Following this path deeper, Herag soon reached a vast plaza, approximately the size of a football field. The plaza, too, featured numerous statues and pyre stone pillars, showing traces of past fires. It was largely empty, containing little else. However, one peculiar object in the plaza's center attracted Herag's attention. Standing 2 meters tall was a stone slab situated in the plaza's heart. Approaching, Herag scrutinized the stone slab, noting engravings of human figures. Beyond the engravings, a myriad of complex patterns decorated its surface. I mustn't look anymore. After observing for a moment, Herag felt dizzy, quickly realizing, my spiritual power isn't sufficient for prolonged viewing of this stone slab. In the wizarding world, numerous items imposed demands on spiritual power. Most commonly found were certain books, whose profound contents overwhelmed those lacking in spiritual force, resulting in dizziness after perusal. Should one persist in viewing beyond their limits, mental harm, even death, Shenlan, identify what this stone slab is. Herag closed his eyes and sat on the ground to rest for a while, his head still feeling buzzing and somewhat dizzy. Shenlan quickly provided the result. The probability of it being an ancient magic stone slab is 87.6%. Ancient magic stone slab. Herag understood what it was. In ancient times, there were also wizards. But back then, there was no paper, so they used other mediums to record magic spells. Some used human or animal bones to record spells, while others used animal fur. The stone slab in front of him was a more advanced recording medium, usually reserved for very powerful spells. It should be a level 1 spell. Herag thought for a moment and reached this conclusion. Only a level 1 spell could make him feel dizzy just by looking at it for a while. Even a most profound level 0 spell couldn't have such an effect, not the same grade. Shenlan, scan and record every detail of the stone slab. Herag instructed. This stone slab is an extremely precious treasure. The value of the spells recorded on it is high. Ancient magic recorded on slabs was never simple. Ancient society was mostly in the form of tribes and groups, and this ancient magic recorded on slabs was likely the core inheritance of a tribe, their survival guarantee from that era. Herag had read in some magical history books that the characteristic of such ancient magic was its extreme combat power, emphasizing actual combat strength improvement. After all, in that primitive era, the primary issue was survival, fighting countless beasts and demons to ensure the tribe's survival. Thus, this kind of ancient magic was very precious. Countless wizards strove to acquire it to enhance their own combat power. Scanning and recording completed. Shenlan took a few minutes to record every detail of the stone slab. Herag glanced at Shenlan's recorded images, still feeling a bit uneasy. Such an important slab. Merely researching from pictures might not be useful, possibly missing some crucial information. He circled around the stone slab, suddenly having a bold idea. I might as well take the entire slab and move it away. This stone slab was 2 meters tall and 50 centimeters wide, buried in the soil. Herag took the herbal digging shovel and squatted down, digging at the soil beneath, finding the slab wasn't buried deeply and could be unearthed. Moving it while carrying or holding would be difficult, but Herag had a space ring. He glanced at the space ring. Though filled with many items, it could still hold this slab. The only problem is there really an owner here? Herag discovered a problem. If this truly belonged to a wizard, this ancient magic stone slab was so valuable. Why would it be left here without any defensive measures? A second-class wizard apprentice like him could reach here. Stronger wizards would certainly find it easier. Herag pondered for a while, but couldn't conclude, unable to determine if there was indeed an owner here. He crouched next to the slab and began digging at its base. Herag dug carefully, afraid to damage the slab entity, as it was a precious treasure. After carefully digging for half an hour, the soil at the base was mostly excavated. Herag attempted to move the slab, discovering he could lift it. He immediately stored the slab in his space ring, also smoothly. With a slab added to the space ring, the internal space seemed to be a bit cramped. Herag looked at the remaining pit and rubbed the back of his head. If this belonged to some wizard and I were caught, my fate could be quite dismal. To secure such a large place, the wizard must be someone Herag couldn't contend with. Now he could only pray that the wizard would return late. If he could get out by dawn, he would flee. His trip here yielded a considerable harvest, not only collecting a pile of magic potion materials, but also unexpectedly acquiring this ancient magic stone slab. Herag calculated that normally, there should be about half an hour left before dawn. If the blacksmith uncle's information was correct, he would have a chance to leave in half an hour. The problem was, Herag didn't know if the spiders outside would leave, as they were living creatures. The blacksmith uncle's existence could only count as a soul. Hiding upon dawn was quite normal. But those spiders were flesh and blood. Herag was unsure if the spider group would disperse after dawn. He walked around the square, carefully observing every place. The other decorations and carvings were very old, but they were just ordinary stone carvings. Herag examined every corner of the square. No more valuable items were found. After confirming everything was okay, Herag carefully approached the cave entrance with a lantern. He maintained a certain distance from the cave entrance and did not continue outward. Through Shenlan, Herag learned there were still many spiders outside. The sky outside was slightly bright. He breathed a sigh of relief. Looks like it's coming daylight. Luckily, the sunrise here is normal. As the sky grew brighter, the spiders outside began to fidget uneasily. Some spiders on the periphery started to head towards their nest, and the spiders blocking the cave entrance began shifting their focus, no longer fixated on the cave, but climbing around instead. 10 minutes later, the spider group began a large-scale retreat. A huge number of spiders started turning towards the direction of their nest in the pine forest, producing a widespread rustling sound. This sound, which originally made Herag's scalp tingle, now seemed extraordinarily pleasant. Herag felt a weight finally lifting from his heart. Herag waited in the cave entrance until it was bright. After it was bright, he did not rush out, but waited for the sunlight to fully shine down before standing at the entrance observing the outside. Indicators of spiders crawling in the forest remained, with a lot of spider silk hanging on the branches. Herag quietly passed through the forest, glancing at the distant fields. To his surprise, there were no fields at all. This is the location. I'm not mistaken. Herag was very certain he had not misremembered. The fields growing magic potion materials were indeed at this location. But now it was dense shrubbery, filled with various short plants and weeds. Herag cautiously moved closer, observing the base of the shrubbery, finding no signs of cultivated land. What's going on here? He muttered in confusion. Shenlan, is this the field for planting dragon's beard grass and other magic potion materials? Herag doubted his eyes, and Shenlan quickly replied. Based on the terrain comparison, there's a 99.99% probability that this is a planting area for dragon's beard grass and other magic potion materials. Herag looked around. It seems I wasn't mistaken. It's not my problem. He looked around. The traces of cultivation were gone, and the path between the fields was also missing. Herag pondered for a moment, then boldly approached the pine forest. His pace was slow, and his movements cautious, trying not to make loud noises. When he reached a point where he could barely make out the pine forest in the distance, he stopped to observe the movements within the forest. The spider silk is gone. After several examinations, Herag found that the spider silk within the pine forest had completely vanished. The ground of the original pine forest was covered with spider silk, but now it was nowhere to be seen. Strange, I just came out of the cave and could see the spider silk hanging on the branches. But now, how come it's all gone in the pine forest? Wait. Herag recalled that at dawn, when he emerged from the cave, he could see residual spider silk on the branches at the entrance and traces of spiders on the ground. Suddenly, he wondered if the fields were gone and the spider colony in the pine forest had disappeared, would the ancient ruins inside the cave still exist? With this in mind, Herag decided to go back to the cave to check the situation. Returning the way he came, he arrived at the cave's vicinity. The sight before him left Herag dumbfounded. The cave entrance was nowhere to be found. The place where the cave used to be was now just a mountain, without any entrance. Refusing to give up, Herag circled around, finding no traces of a cave. He used a spade to clear away some weeds from the mountain's surface, digging a bit into the soil, but found no signs of excavation. Turning back, Herag glanced at the surrounding woods, with the spider silk on the trees gone and no traces of spiders on the ground. So much spider silk hung on the trees that it couldn't possibly all be blown away by the wind in such a short time. With my current knowledge, it's hard to explain this phenomenon. Herag had never encountered such a situation and hadn't learned related knowledge, not even knowing which subject to study to understand this phenomenon. According to the blacksmith uncle, you can leave during the day. Does that mean that day and night are two different worlds here? Or rather, two different spaces? Otherwise, the changes couldn't be this drastic. After a moment of thought, Herag speculated that there might be space overlap here. At night, the eerie town, the fields planted with magic potion materials, the spider colony, and the cave would all emerge, whereas during the day, it was the normal valley town. Suddenly, Herag thought, right, let's check out the town. The residential houses in Valley Town are dangerous. Every house harbors something unusual. If it were nighttime, Herag wouldn't dare go back. not even to take another look. But now it's daytime. He felt he could risk going back to observe from afar, and if there were no issues, then venture into the town. After all, returning to Heaven's Edge at the foot of the mountain requires passing through the town. If there were problems with the town, he would just circumvent it from a distance. Looking back at the mountain wall without the cave, he retraced his steps. However, he still avoided the location of the pine forest, as the impression the spider colony left on him was too profound. Even in the daytime, he dared not get too close, taking a wide detour instead. On the way back, Herag also observed the road beneath his feet. The giant mammoth from last night should have left obvious tracks, considering its size. But as Herag walked, he saw no trace of it. The ground was overgrown with weeds, with even the roads covered, suggesting it had been years since anyone passed through. Herag followed this path back to the town, stopping at a spot where he could clearly see the situation in the town. Surveying the town from afar, he sensed something ominous. He remembered that when he first arrived in Valley Town during the day, it looked like an ordinary town from the mountain's base, with people moving about. But now, from his position, Valley Town appeared entirely in ruins. The residential houses in Valley Town were either completely collapsed, decayed, or wrapped in numerous green plants. Some houses bore traces of fire, with an adjacent cluster of houses reduced to ruins by the flames. Approaching a bit closer, Herag found that the road in the town was also overgrown with weeds. From a distance, you couldn't even tell it used to be a road. According to his memory, he made his way to the blacksmith uncle's house. The main structure of this house still remained relatively intact, and the main door was still tightly closed. Looking through the window, Herag saw that the interior setup was similar to what he saw the previous night. He walked to the door and tried to push it, but it didn't budge. The lock had rusted shut, and when Herag applied a bit more force, he ended up toppling the entire door frame. Feeling somewhat embarrassed, Herag said, "Sorry, blacksmith uncle. I didn't mean to." The door frame collapsed to the ground with a bang, and years of accumulated dust flew up, forcing Herag to step back outside to avoid the dust. Once the dust settled, Herag re-entered the house. He explored the first floor, discovering various plants already growing in every room. He even spotted a snake, which slithered away quickly through a hole in the window after being startled by Herag. "Let's check the second floor." Herag thought for a moment and decided to take a look upstairs. The stairs leading to the second floor were already somewhat decayed, with many steps having holes. As Herag stepped on the stairs, they creaked under his weight. To avoid stepping on unsupported sections, he had Shenlan scan the staircase. Some sections beneath were hollow and would break if stepped on. Cautiously, Herag ascended the stairs to the second floor, casting his first glance at the dining table. Last night, Robert's unfortunate arm had been on this table. Now, the table was still there, but apart from a lot of clutter, the arm was nowhere in sight. Herag checked the other two rooms on the second floor. Each was dilapidated and overgrown with various plants. What caught his attention was that in the room where there was a leg hanging last night, Herag still found those photographs. The photos were blurred beyond recognition, but he could vaguely tell it was a family photo of the blacksmith uncle's family of 3. Besides the photos, Herag also discovered a rag doll at the head of the bed. The rag doll was tattered, but it was obvious that it was the same one held by the little girl last night. This rag doll, Herag picked it up and gently dusted off the thick layer of dust covering it. It was just an ordinary rag doll, not a resentful doll, nor was there anything unusual about it. Herag looked at the doll, recalling everything he had experienced, and felt that something unfortunate might have happened to the blacksmith uncle's family in this town. Otherwise, they wouldn't find peace even in death. He sighed and placed the rag doll back where it belonged. Last night, Herag hadn't noticed, but in the daylight, from the room's setup and color scheme, he could tell it was a little girl's room. Herag looked around the room. It was about the same as last night, except many things were already in ruins. For example, when he pulled the cabinet door, the whole thing fell off, having completely decayed. Inside the cabinet, there were still some clothes, all belonging to a little girl. After leaving the room, Herag stepped on the rotting stairs to the attic. The attic was even messier, with many weeds growing, and there were several holes in the ceiling. Herag glanced at the windowsill. No heads were there. The window glass was broken, and half of the doorframe hung outside, looking like it would fall off at any moment. After wandering around the blacksmith uncle's house, Herag left, propping up the fallen doorframe and setting it back into place on his way out. He actually wanted to find the corpses of the blacksmith uncle's family, even if they were just bones, to bury them and let them rest in peace. From what he observed last night, the blacksmith uncle's family might have all turned into evil spirits, restless in death. So he wanted to see if he could find any remains to bury the family. After all, without the blacksmith uncle's help, he could very well have died. Without the information the blacksmith uncle provided, he wouldn't have been able to handle various situations later on. But, unfortunately, he couldn't find any remains. After leaving, Herag went to check another place. He arrived at the house next to the demon flower garden and found that the garden plot was still there, with many kinds of flowers growing, but no sign of the demon flower. The house next to the garden had now become a heap of ruins, lacking even the basic structure of a house, with just a pile of wood haphazardly stacked. Herag continued to look around various places in the town, hoping to find traces of Robert, who had gone missing. He inspected every resident house, but found nothing and didn't discover any corpses or bones. There are far fewer houses here than last night. After wandering through these houses, Herag noticed that the number of houses was significantly fewer. He had noticed it last night that there were far more houses than when he first entered Valley Town. Is it really two different spaces? Herag increasingly felt his guess was correct. In fact, verifying it would be simple. Just come back here again tonight. But Herag would never return, not until he had enough strength to handle it. At the very least, he wouldn't step back in until he could easily manage that spider swarm. Otherwise, he'd just be courting death. He continued down the mountain path, and when passing the tavern, he suddenly realized that the footsteps behind him had disappeared. When did they disappear? Herag found he hadn't noticed, as the footsteps seemed to have vanished long ago. He thought back, remembering that he hadn't heard the footsteps since entering the cave. At that time, his focus was on the murals and stone slab, completely missing the moment the footsteps vanished. By the time he came out of the cave, it was already daylight, and he heard no more footsteps behind him. Herag held his head as he pondered. What on earth were those footsteps? This puzzled him greatly. Although the footsteps had followed him for quite a while, they hadn't caused any harm, leaving him confused about what they were and their purpose. While the footsteps had not led to any danger, Herag had a nagging feeling that the matter of the footsteps wasn't over. He glanced at the tavern, which had collapsed extensively, making it easy to see the tables and bar from outside. After one last look at the tavern, Herag followed the mountain path down to the foot of the hill. Looking back, Valley Town remained in decay, and the downhill path was overgrown with weeds at some point. It was estimated that before long, this mountain path would merge completely with the surrounding mountains, showing no sign of ever having been a path. The one-line sky canyon had also changed somewhat, and Herag clearly remembered how it looked on the way in. On arrival, the path was fairly clean, and one could tell that it was regularly maintained. But now, the entire Heaven's Edge had become nearly a primal forest. Shrubbery as tall as a person filled the canyon, making it impossible to see the end of the path. Herag drew out his long sword, cutting through the bushes, blocking the way as he walked. By the time he walked out of Heaven's Edge, he was quite wet, from the dew clinging to the bushes, as well as the accumulated water in wide-leaf bushes that tipped over unexpectedly. As Herag emerged, he immediately saw a familiar figure. Robert was sleeping against a tree nearby, snoozing soundly. Above his head, a squirrel perched on a branch, staring wide-eyed at Herag. Herag walked over, and the squirrel, startled, chattered loudly before scurrying away out of sight. Robert seemed to be awakened by the squirrel, slowly opening his eyes to see Herag at once. "Sir," Herag looked at him and asked, "Why are you sleeping here?" Robert, puzzled, scratched his head. "I don't know. I just remember having a butterbeer with you and that uncle at the tavern. Then nothing after. Anything else you remember?" Herag continued to ask. Robert shook his head. No, the last image in my memory is of the tavern, and then nothing. Just a butterbeer. Did I get drunk from that? Or was something added to it? Hearing his account, Herag pondered. Robert's last memory only exists at the tavern, so the Robert we met later, and the dismembered Robert, might not be the real one. He suddenly turned to look at Robert, thinking, or perhaps this one in front of me isn't the real one. Robert, sensing Herag's stare, felt a chill down his spine, swallowed hard, and said, "Sir, what's wrong?" "Nothing. Let's hit the road. Time to head back." Herag glanced at the trees in the distance, where two horses were still tethered. Herag swung onto his horse, and Robert quickly followed, mounting his own horse. Herag looked back at the one-line sky canyon, where dense bushes still grew. He turned his head and asked, "Robert, look over there." Robert followed his gaze toward the one-line sky canyon. Seeing the scene clearly, he exclaimed in surprise, "What's going on here? It wasn't like this when we came." He looked as if he'd seen a ghost, unable to comprehend how such a transformation could occur overnight. "Looks like it's not just me." Herag had doubted whether only he saw it this way, but now it seemed the place had indeed undergone significant changes. "Let's go." Herag pulled the reins and gently kicked the horse's belly, and the horse began to gallop down the road. The matters concerning Valley Town remained unclear to him. He only knew that what was hidden behind it was beyond his current capability to explore. There were many mysteries here yet to be unraveled, waiting until he had enough strength to explore them in the future. This experience was perilous, fraught with danger, and surviving it took no small amount of luck. Were it not for randomly encountering blacksmith uncle at the tavern and treating him to a mug of butterbeer, he might have perished at the hands of the little girl. But with high risk came high reward, and this time the gains were substantial. A pile of high-tier magic potion materials. Selling them to Larry once back in the Moonlight Forest should earn a considerable number of magic stones. Most importantly, the ancient magic stone slab, a secret Herag vowed to keep even from his teacher, Larry. The stone slab recorded a level 1 spell, which he currently had no qualification to even look at. He needed to at least advance to a third-class wizard apprentice and raise his spiritual power close to the requirements for an official wizard promotion to read the contents of the stone slab properly. Herag wasn't worried. Such matters couldn't be rushed and required a step-by-step, gradual enhancement of his strength. This time also provided an opportunity to learn more. His understanding of ancient magic was still too scant. The complexity of a level 1 spell model was exponentially greater than that of a level 0 spell, entirely different in magnitude. Herag had much to learn. Shenlan stored a wealth of knowledge he hadn't yet had the time to study. During this trip, he could digest the knowledge stored in Shenlan, most from the Moonlight Forest Library. Robert rode behind him with a troubled expression. He couldn't understand what had happened, nor dared he ask Herag. But seeing Herag eager to leave, he sensed that the matter was grave. Herag was a mystic, and for something to frighten a mystic so, Robert found the thought terrifying. More importantly, he couldn't remember what he'd experienced. "Sir, I feel pain in my neck and limbs." Robert hadn't noticed upon waking, but once on horseback, he felt pain in his neck and limbs, as though he'd been slashed. He touched his neck but found no wounds. Neck pain. Hearing this, Herag recalled the sight of Robert's severed limbs from the previous night. He grew puzzled, thinking, Robert feels neck and limb pain. Could he really have been dismembered? Yet why is he still alive now? Herag silently pondered, not mentioning his observations to Robert. Speaking of it would solve nothing and might instead increase Robert's fear. Both rode swiftly, eager to distance themselves from Valley Town. Herag deliberately observed the surroundings on the return journey. The scene remained unchanged after leaving Valley Town, just as it had been when they arrived. 2 days later, Storm City came into view for Herag. Upon returning to Storm City, both felt a sigh of relief, the bustling street imparting a sense of safety, as if this was truly the realm of humans. The hawker calls, disputes, and the distant sound of a child crying and a mother scolding all seemed melodious. Herag headed immediately for the Adventurers Association upon returning to Storm City. The first-floor hall of the Adventurers Association building was as crowded as before. "Where's Milo?" Herag asked as he grabbed one of the association staff members. The young man frowned when held, unhappy and about to curse, but seeing Robert obediently following Herag like a child, quickly realized the gravity of the situation. His expression shifted promptly to a smile as he said, "Sir, the vice chairman is upstairs. Shall I notify him for you?" "No need. I'll find him myself." Herag released his hand and headed straight for the second floor. Robert followed closely, glancing at the staff member and offering a small smile without a word. On reaching the second floor, Herag knocked on the door and entered without waiting for Milo's response. "Mr. Herag, you're back." Milo was seated on a couch reading, with a steaming cup of coffee before him. Herag sat across from him and asked, "Are you sure you showed me all the file information on Valley Town?" The people there had obviously all died, turned into evil spirits. For years, surely he wasn't the only visitor. Entering as an ordinary person was certain death. Herag couldn't believe no one had gone missing there over the years. Given the scale of the Adventurers Association, ignorance of the anomalies at Valley Town seemed implausible, leading Herag to suspect that Milo was holding back. Milo explained, "I indeed showed Mr. Herag all the files. As I said, it's merely an abandoned town for decades, not worth looking at." "What?" Herag widened his eyes, feeling as if Milo were playing with him. In just 2 days, Milo's story completely changed, with unflinching composure as though stating facts. Milo hesitated. "Mr. Herag, did something happen?" Spotting Robert's perplexed eyes upon him, Milo sensed that something was indeed amiss. Herag took a deep breath to calm himself. "You didn't say so 2 days ago. You said it was just an ordinary town back then, no mention of it being deserted for decades." Milo shook his head firmly. "Impossible. Many know Valley Town was raided by bandits years ago. Left everyone—" Milo said these things with clear reasoning, without any pauses, with no signs of lying. Herag also didn't think he would lie about such a matter, but fell silent, pondering something. "Mr. Milo, you must be mistaken. I've been to that place several times before. There are people in the town. It's just an ordinary small town. But 2 days ago when we went, the mountain road was normal on the first day, but the next day it was overgrown with weeds, which would take many years to grow like that." Robert couldn't sit still, and with some agitation, he told Milo what he had seen and heard. Milo sat upright, knowing that since Great Knight Robert and Mystic Herag had both said so, the problem wasn't simple. These two wouldn't have come a mess with him for no reason. After pondering for a moment, Milo said, "Mr. Herag, you remember the Valley Town archive I showed you earlier, right? Everything I said is recorded in the archive. We can check it again." Herag nodded. "That's exactly what I was thinking." He thought the same. Human memory might be flawed, but the archives are written in black and white. Surely they're not wrong. The three of them went upstairs again, to the place where various archives were stored. Milo, just like last time, went to the location of the Valley Town archive and retrieved it. He directly handed it to Herag. "Mr. Herag, take a look." Herag took it, found no traces of magic power on it, and opened it to read carefully. He read for about 10 minutes, without speaking the whole time. After reading, he closed the archive, murmuring, "Shenlan, bring out the Valley Town materials recorded last time." Valley Town materials have been retrieved. Shenlan presented the previously scanned Valley Town archive in front of Herag. Herag looked at it again, pondering, how could this be? In the document he held, it clearly stated that Valley Town was attacked by bandits 30 years ago. All the townspeople were massacred. Not a single person was left alive. The bandits stole all the town's wealth and set fire to many houses. More importantly, the bandits were never caught, and to this day, nobody knows which group did it. After this incident, Valley Town gradually became deserted, and few people went there. Because too many people died there, no one wished to settle. Gradually, Valley Town was forgotten. Herag could tell from the paper and handwriting that this archive was indeed many years old and didn't seem forged. "Shenlan, Did Milo show any signs of lying throughout? He wanted to confirm once more. Based on observation, the probability that Milo is telling the truth is 99.8%. Shenlan provided the result. Milo was just a night level, without any traces of energy particles on him, likely not lying. Herag was a bit puzzled. His view of the archive clearly recorded all population changes, taxes, and other details of Valley Town over 30 years. The information was very detailed and had been scanned by him at the time. Was that place so bizarre? When did I start being affected? Herag had never been to Valley Town since arriving at Storm City, so everything he experienced at the Adventurers Association should not have been influenced by Valley Town. But after returning, the situation changed. Herag's face turned grave. It seems either Milo's or our memories have been altered. What kind of power could affect such a broad range? This must involve rules. The text on the archives was undoubtedly altered, but the distance here from Valley Town was over 100 kilometers. While thinking, Herag casually handed the archive to Robert, recommending he take a look. Robert took it and, after looking at the archive for a few moments, widened his eyes in disbelief. He finished reading, his hands trembling, asking, "Mr. Milo, are you joking with us? Is this archive real?" Of course, this place isn't accessible to just anyone, and no one would switch such a valueless archive. It's just a small place, and this matter happened many years ago. Milo explained, "Robert, go out and ask others about Valley Town. Don't ask people within the Adventurers Association, go ask on the street." Herag was still uneasy and needed to confirm whether everyone's memories were altered. In theory, there's still a possibility Milo was lying and replaced the archive. This probability is very small, but he wanted to confirm again. Robert nodded, understanding Herag's intention, and quickly ran downstairs. He also wanted to confirm whether it was a problem with his own mind. About an hour later, Robert ran back out of breath. He didn't seem tired, but rather frightened based on his expression. "Sir, I went out to inquire, and what they say matches Mr. Milo's account." Robert looked dejected, occasionally turning around as if fearing something was following him. Herag nodded to indicate he understood. Milo couldn't possibly unite everyone in Storm City to lie to them. So it seems there's only one possibility. They triggered some power after doing something in Valley Town, leading to everyone's memories about Valley Town, except for the two of them, to change. Only rules could achieve such feats, something Herag wasn't qualified to access at this stage or in the foreseeable future. The fact that Herag and Robert weren't affected might be because they were in Valley Town at the time, thus being influenced by the power. Although Robert didn't know why he was sleeping there, he indeed had memories of drinking at the tavern, indicating he did enter it. "Sir, what should we do now?" Robert felt that everything around was fake. Only he and Herag were real. Herag patted his shoulder with a smile. "It's okay. It's just that some power exerted its influence. Don't be overly anxious. Just eat, drink, and live normally." "But, sir..." Robert was still nervous, facing such an uncanny situation for the first time. It's one thing for one person to remember wrong, but how could everyone remember wrong? Even the archive contents changing? This was beyond Robert's understanding. "Relax, the problem isn't big. You should survive, otherwise we wouldn't have made it out alive, so don't be so scared." Herag could only comfort him a bit, not revealing that there were things more terrifying than death. The affairs in Valley Town clearly exceeded his ability to manage. He couldn't do anything. The only thing he could do was run. Herag had already prepared to run away, to hastily leave this storm city, to leave the Violet Kingdom. There were two reasons for the escape. One was having picked up quite a few things from Valley Town, and if there happened to be an owner there, he feared the owner would come to reclaim his belongings. Herag was definitely no match in a fight, so he had no choice but to run first. The second reason was that Valley Town was too bizarre a place, affecting even Storm City. Herag decided to distance himself further, for even the strongest power has its limits. Mr. Larry's mission is still incomplete. It's time to set out for the Doors Kingdom. He hadn't forgotten his mission, which was to go west to the Doors Kingdom to find Moonstone Grass. Although this mission was merely an excuse, it still needed to be completed. I hope the matters in Moonlight Forest are concluded soon. Herag touched the talisman stone in his pocket, still without any message. If the war had ended, Larry would have notified him through the talisman stone. Holding the talisman stone outside, he was unable to use the communication function properly or browse the internal gossip tavern and missions of Moonlight Forest, only passively receiving some messages, and only someone with Larry's level as an official wizard would have permission to send messages. Having made up his mind, Herag prepared to leave, speaking, "All right then, I'll be leaving Storm City in the next couple of days." Robert was a bit panicked. "Sir, where are you going? Can you take me with you?" Herag decisively refused. "No way. Taking you along is too troublesome. You're not a beauty. Why would I take you? But I feel it's a bit safer following you. If you leave, who knows what I'll encounter." Robert was feeling quite insecure. Herag laughed. "Safe with me? Are you sure? You've only been with me for one trip and already encountered these incidents. What about later?" Robert thought about it and felt it made sense. He was just unlucky to have led the way and ended up encountering such strange matters. If things went on, it could only get more dangerous, and he couldn't withstand such plights with his fragile life, he thought, and fell silent. Herag chuckled and then spoke to Milo. "Vice President Milo, there's something I need your help with." "Sir, please go ahead." Milo listened attentively. After leaving the Adventurers Association, Herag returned to the Banks family's inn. Sid was the first to learn of this news and hurried back, reeking of alcohol. "Sir, you're back." Herag was packing his things in a room, looked back, and said, "I'll be leaving in a few days. You can also return." "Leave? Where are you going, sir?" Sid sobered up slightly. Herag said, "That's not something you need to know. When you return this time, help me give my thanks to Count Huin." "All right. I'll relay the message to the Count." Sid nodded. At night, Herag lay on the bed and began to meditate. The recipe for the magic potion to speed up meditation still needed verification. He originally planned to stay in Storm City for a while to finalize this recipe through experimentation. But due to the Valley Town incident, Storm City was no longer a place to stay. A distance of over 100 kilometers clearly wasn't enough. Upon reaching the Doors Kingdom on the west coast, it should no longer be under the influence of Valley Town. However, traveling from a Violet Kingdom to the Doors Kingdom is quite troublesome, requiring identity verification and some official documents from the Violet Kingdom, which is quite a hassle. Having discussed his plans with Milo, Milo assured him he would handle it, preparing a fabricated identity for Herag with all necessary documents in place. Being the vice president of the Adventurers Association, Milo had an extensive network, and it would be easy to arrange such matters with a connection to the nobility. Milo said that completing these formalities would take about 7 days, so Herag would stay in the city during this period. On the third day, Robert came. "Sir, I've been having nightmares these days, dreaming of a monstrous man with an axe chasing me, every night being chopped on the head with an axe. Sir, do you think something's haunting me?" Robert looked worried, with prominent dark circles under his eyes, indicating he hadn't slept well these days. Herag pondered for a moment, then took out a pocket watch and said, "Seems like something is indeed there. I can't be sure. Let me clear it for you. This is the high-level holy light technique, capable of dispelling all curses and nightmares. The usage is limited, though, but I'll help you this time. After all, you helped me find my way." Of course, there was nothing on Robert. At least Herag didn't see anything. But to let this unfortunate guy have a good sleep, Herag decided to do a bit of psychological therapy. He had already used the holy healing technique on himself, but nothing happened. It only left his body warm for a while. "Thank you, sir." Robert immediately recognized the pocket watch as a treasure. Its seamless construction was unlike anything he had seen. Having been an adventurer for so many years, his eyesight was quite excellent too. Moreover, since Herag wore this pocket watch intimately, anything a mystic wore closely wouldn't be simple. With these thoughts, Robert felt a bit excited, feeling he might be saved. Herag held the pocket watch, dangling it in front of Robert, and then began to infuse it with magic power to activate the watch. The pocket watch soon emitted a white glow, and a woman's phantom appeared, casting a glance at Robert, then gently exhaling a breath towards him. This breath enveloped Robert, making him feel as if he were soaking in a hot spring, his whole body warming up. At the same time, a plume of black smoke emanated from Robert's body, quickly dissipating after emerging. So there really was something. Herag was a bit surprised, not expecting there really was something on Robert, and that the holy healing technique actually worked. Witnessing this, Robert felt a chill of fear. I knew it. Something felt off about my body. Glad I came to find Sir Herag. If I waited till he left, my life might not have been saved. Once that black smoke dissipated from his body, he felt much lighter, having previously felt a lot of pressure weighing down on him. You should be able to sleep well now, Herag said in a low voice. Thank you for saving me, sir. Robert, overwhelmed with emotion, knelt on the ground and knocked his head against the floor, clearly having been severely tormented these past few days. All right, go on, head back. Herag waved his hand. Robert nodded, got up, and prepared to leave. Suddenly, Herag called out to him, There's something I want to ask you, though you don't have to answer if you don't want to. I'm just a bit curious. What's it, sir? Please ask, and I'll answer whatever I know. Robert said earnestly, I just want to know, who was it that hired you to assassinate Josh? Herag's question was indeed just out of curiosity. Robert was surprised and said, Sir, how did you know it was me following that day? He remembered he was far away that day and had found cover to hide, so Herag couldn't possibly see his face. Don't worry about it. Herag naturally wouldn't answer his question. Robert thought to himself, mystics have many methods, so knowing it was him was quite normal. He said, Originally, according to industry rules, I shouldn't say anything. Even if tortured, we have to adhere to professional ethics. But since it's you, sir, asking, I will answer. The one who hired me to assassinate Josh was actually Count Huyen. Count Huyen. Herag was somewhat surprised by this answer, but not entirely. Robert laughed and said, I also don't know what these nobles are thinking, hiring assassins to kill their own young child. But as an adventurer, as long as they pay me enough, I won't bother with the reasons. Herag nodded and said, I understand. You may leave. Take care, sir. Robert solemnly bowed, then quietly closed the door as he left. Count Huyen, huh? Looks like he's picked an heir for himself, though he might not need to choose since he can live many more years now. No wonder he was vague about the origin of the resentful doll back then. He was afraid of this matter being exposed. Herag shook his head, deciding not to dwell on this noble family's affairs, purely as an observer. 3 days later, Milo visited in person, bringing Herag the necessary documents. The name of his new identity was Gellant Logan, a fallen small noble from the countryside near Storm City, who became an adventurer due to declining family fortunes. This time, he was heading to Door's Kingdom, hoping to explore new opportunities. All the official documents were in order, with detailed identification that no one could tell was fabricated, sparing Herag a lot of trouble. Although Herag could enter Door's Kingdom through unconventional means, fewer complications are better, so it's best to go through normal channels. He looked at the identification for a while, then raised his head and asked, Does this Gellant actually exist? This identification is too real. Milo laughed and said, There's always a fool who will sell anything for money. He just chuckled without saying much more, but Herag understood the underlying meaning of his words. This Gellant, most likely, was no longer alive. No wonder this identification is so genuine, because he was real to begin with. Herag didn't know what to say as he tucked away these documents. To get things done, Milo would certainly eliminate Gellant. He wouldn't want a situation where Herag was holding the identification, only for someone to burst out and declare themselves as the real Gellant, ruining Herag's plans. For Milo, pleasing a mystic was definitely a good thing. So killing a fallen small noble was just a trifle to him, as long as it helped the mystic accomplish his tasks. Herag sighed inwardly. Is this the fate of the weak? To lack the strength to even know why they died. Your destruction is none of my concern. 3 days later, on the Dragon Ridge Highland Road, a large caravan was slowly moving forward. This caravan seemed to have 300 to 400 people, including merchants, slaves, and accompanying guards. There were about 100 guards, some dressed in uniform armor, likely from a powerful adventure group. After all, the full set of uniform armor was quite expensive, only affordable to elite members of powerful adventure groups. There were around 50 fully armored guards, accounting for just a small portion of the guards. The other guards had varied attire, clearly a group of adventurers constantly roaming the edge of life and death. Such large caravans often hire these adventurers. While slightly weaker than powerful adventure groups, they are cheaper. These adventurers have a fervent pursuit of money. A caravan only needs to shout in an adventure hall for countless adventurers to volunteer and compete to join the caravan. With many people, the price became negotiable. Merchants would never overspend, offering the lowest possible price. Although adventurers secretly cursed merchants' stinginess, they could only smile and display their strength, flaunting their muscles, and recounting past experiences, striving to show their worth. Fail to impress, and the job won't come to you. Competition among adventurers was fierce, and the pressure intense. Large caravan jobs were the most comfortable. Although the pay wasn't high, it was much better than ordinary task rewards. Most importantly, large caravans rarely encountered danger. No foolish bandits would rob such a massive caravan, as it would be seeking death. This greatly improved safety. With safety and decent pay, adventurers naturally clamored to join. This caravan carried large quantities of goods ready to be shipped from Violet Kingdom to Doris Kingdom for resale, with profits reaching 6 figures in gold coins for a successful trip. The journey was lengthy, taking 6 months for a round trip, and profits could be uncertain if unexpected events occurred. Losses were inevitable, the extent mattered. The total loss was rare, happening only if everyone in the caravan died or fled, which was unfortunate. Dragon Ridge Highland was the necessary passage from Violet Kingdom to Doris Kingdom, with high altitude and wide roads that perfectly accommodated such large-scale caravans. Herag lay on a bed in a carriage, beneath it a fixed stove simmering coffee, its aroma wafting through the carriage. His carriage was nicely decorated, with all aspects being top tier. The exterior, however, looked ordinary, showing no signs of luxury inside. Milo prepared this specially for him, the humble exterior prioritizing discretion when traveling. Herag's carriage was situated in the middle of the caravan, allowing him exclusive use. The rest of the caravan had heard rumors about his identity, knowing he was a small noble whose family wasn't doing well, thus seeking opportunities in Doris Kingdom to restore his family's glory. Herag spent the past few days inside the carriage, rarely appearing outside. According to reports, the caravan needed about a month to cross Dragon Ridge Highland. The journey ahead was long. Beyond Dragon Ridge Highland, it would take 2 more months to reach Doris Kingdom's border, marking a lengthy voyage. The scenery on Dragon Ridge Highland was monotonous, with few tall trees and sparse vegetation. The caravan's established route had consistent water sources for replenishment. Several carriages were stocked with supplies to survive the highland, enabling resupply once off the highland before continuing the journey. Herag's driver was temporarily hired from the caravan. He was a slave named Ed, a man around 30 years old, relatively thin, but experienced in driving. Herag was quite satisfied with his driving skills. The journey was smooth. Ed was a rather silent person, always driving the carriage in silence. If Herag didn't call him, he wouldn't make a sound. There was a brand mark on his face, a symbol of slavery. Herag paid the caravan 10 silver coins to rent Ed to drive for him for 3 months. Of course, not a single copper coin of these 10 silver coins would end up in Ed's pocket. Slaves like them were merely objects, and objects wouldn't have possessions of their own. As night gradually fell, the caravan also stopped moving forward. One by one, the carriages began adjusting their positions, forming a defensive formation, including Herag's carriage. The people of the caravan started to light 7 or 8 bonfires, and set up pots on them to cook, providing meals for everyone. The entire caravan ate dry food at noon and only had hot meals at night. Herag also ate the food provided by the caravan. He had water and food stored in his carriage and space ring. These were for emergencies. If anything happened to the caravan, this food and water could support him for a while. Half an hour later, Herag received his dinner, potato stew with smoked meat and half a smoked fish. This meal was considered good, as meals in the caravan were divided into different grades. Herag, who paid for his food, ate the best, while the adventurers ate slightly worse. Slaves like Ed ate even worse. They were fed leftovers mixed together, and it was from several days ago, basically slop. There were quite a few nobles in the caravan who despised the caravan's food and often left a lot uneaten. The caravan was very frugal, not wasting any food, collecting these leftovers to feed the slaves. After eating, Herag returned to his carriage to continue studying the knowledge stored in Shenlan. Lately, he's been reading some magic history. There are too few direct records of ancient magic, so he could only learn more from some historical accounts. After Shenlan scanned and recorded the ancient magic stone slab, it could start analyzing the content. However, analysis required the consumption of his own magic power. Now, during a long journey, he had to maintain his state at all times, so he couldn't use too much magic power. The analysis of the stone slab content and the experiment with magic potion formulas both needed to wait until he reached the Doris Kingdom to begin. Dragon Ridge Highlands climate was harsh, with the sun itching the skin during the day and temperatures dropping sharply at night. Herag was using a quilt sent by Lillian, which suited this weather well. In the deep night, Herag closed his eyes to meditate. The seventh star in his mind was solidifying, and he estimated it would take about 2 more months to complete the meditation. As the night deepened, it became especially quiet around. There were no long-term residents on Dragon Ridge Highland, and few animals as well, making the nights tranquil. The caravan's location was bright, with several bonfires burning throughout the night. The watchmen sat by the fires to keep warm and fend off the night's chill. Early the next morning, as the sky just brightened, the caravan prepared to set out, and the surroundings became bustling. They had to seize the daylight to quickly leave Dragon Ridge Highland. It was now September, and Dragon Ridge Highland could enter snowy winter at any moment. Usually, snow starts in October, but if the weather is unusual, heavy snow could block the way in September, which would be dangerous. Fortunately, there were no such signs at present. The caravan had been traveling safely in Dragon Ridge Highland for 20 days smoothly, with about 5 days left to exit this region. The caravan advanced slowly in the thick white mist. Due to the clear road traces and only one road in Dragon Ridge Highland, there was no worry about getting lost in the white mist. They just needed to follow the road. Herag lay in the carriage, initially resting his eyes, but suddenly opened them. There was nothing unusual in Shenlan's environmental detection, but Herag heard some uncommon sounds. Having traveled on Dragon Ridge Highland for so many days, Herag was familiar with the surrounding sounds. But at this moment, he heard the distant sound of hooves, and quite a lot of them. The caravan remained peaceful, proceeding as usual, obviously unaware of this unusual noise. After a while, as the hoofbeats got closer, a voice suddenly came from the front. Enemy attack. It was Kalim's voice, the leader of the Putis adventurer group, known for their full-body armor. He commanded all the caravan's guards, and they all had to obey his orders. Of course, this was only theoretical. Adventurers were notorious for not following orders and liked to act on their own thoughts. Kalim had strength close to a great knight, ready to take that crucial step at any moment. It was said that he came from a noble family, but preferred adventures over enjoying his family's estate. He treated his adventurer group well, with benefits far exceeding ordinary adventurers, evident from their full-body armor. Wealthy and powerful, Kalim's reputation grew, often taking on big jobs like this caravan escort. Kalim was the first among the caravan's guards to hear the distant hoofbeats. He decisively judged it as an enemy attack and ordered the convoy to establish defensive formations. Kaleem divided the other adventurers into several teams, each led by a member of his adventure group. After his warning, adventure group members immediately commanded their adventurer subordinates to arrange the carriages, defending against the approaching hoofbeats. The defensive formation was quickly set up, with guards gathered beside the carriages, weapons in hand, eyes fixed ahead. The elderly, sick, and noble noncombatants were placed at the back to avoid the battle. Herag and Ed were in the rear, lying on a slope. He had a smoked fish in his mouth, chewing slowly. He wasn't planning to join the fight, having paid for his protection, even though it was Milo's money. Still, as a paying customer, why should he have to go to the battlefield? Minutes later, though the white mist still hindered visibility, everyone heard the dense sound of hooves. The hoofbeats sounded like war drums striking fear into everyone's hearts, darkening their expressions. The large scale of the hoofbeats indicated a probable military force. Only a military could have so many horses. In this place, no bandit could possess such resources. It's not uncommon for armies to disguise themselves as bandits and rob merchant caravans. Ordinary adventurers, unless they've reached the level of a great knight, have no ability to resist against a well-formed army. A few volleys of arrows are enough to turn these adventurers into porcupines. The combat ability of an army is not something these scattered adventurers can match. More importantly, strong individuals exist within the army, and great knights are not uncommon. Since this army dares to come to a place like Dragon Ridge Highland to make a profit, there must be a great knight holding down the fort. No one is allowed to act without my order. The speaker was Luo Kue, the owner of this caravan and the person with the most authority. All the guards were hired by him. Luo Kue was well aware that negotiation was the only way out when facing an army. If they dared to resist, this group of people would certainly die. The Dragon Ridge Highland is an isolated place. The death of 300 or 400 people would go unnoticed. It would be difficult to investigate who did it. Even if investigated, what could be done? No one would create a conflict with the army of the Violet Kingdom for these people's sake. A few minutes later, the caravan finally saw what this army looked like. They realized that they were already surrounded, and due to the white mist, they couldn't clearly see how many soldiers there were, but certainly more than their number. The soldiers on the other side all rode horses. About 60% were fully clad in armor, all coldly watching the caravan. "Greetings, gentlemen. I am Luakue Dome, acquainted with General Tranton, and I hand over military aid annually. Please, can you let us go?" Luo Kue stepped forward with a sycophantic smile. From the army, a man rode out on a tall horse. As he wore full armor and a helmet, it was hard to see his appearance. He said, "General Tranton? Sorry, we don't know such a person. We're just a bunch of bandits." Their armor bore no insignia, appearing freshly forged and not yet engraved with the Violet Kingdom's characteristic mark. Luo Kue continued, "Gentlemen, this cargo is meant to be sold in the Doors Kingdom to turn a profit. How about this? When I return from the Doors Kingdom, I'll personally offer you 100,000 gold coins." The other man sneered, "Do you take me for a fool? Stop wasting words. Hand over anything valuable, and we want the goods too. Can't you spare us some, sir? It's not easy making this trip, and I have a whole family to feed." Luo Kue pleaded, "I don't care if you live or die. Right now, immediately, hand over the valuables, or we'll take them ourselves." With that, the man drew his longsword, and other soldiers pointed their weapons at the caravan. Luo Kue's face went ashen as he waved his hand to those behind him. Hand over the goods to them, alas. The caravan workers hesitated for a bit, but looking at the army poised to strike, they felt a chill down their necks and quickly turned to move the goods. "Wait!" At this moment, a voice rang out, and everyone saw that it was Kaleem who spoke. He walked out with a solemn face, looked at the leader opposite, and said, "You're Ives, the Knight Commander under Duke Theodore, aren't you? Aren't you afraid that the Duke will find out about your actions here?" Ives remained silent for a while. "You've got the wrong person." Kaleem laughed. "Got the wrong person? A few months ago, you approached me at a banquet. How quickly forgotten. I stand here today, If you dare touch our caravan, I promise Duke Theodore will hang you on the gallows." The scene was silent. The caravan did not expect Kaleem to have such strong backing and dare to directly threaten the opposing army. And Ives indeed fell silent, seemingly quite wary of Kaleem. Herag sighed upon hearing this. "Idiot!" Luo Kuwait glanced at Kaleem, his face showing obvious panic. After a long silence, Ives raised his long sword. "Everyone listen! Kill them! All of them!" "You!" Kaleem looked incredulous. He didn't expect Ives would dare to overstep his bounds, aiming not only to kill him, but also to eliminate everyone to silence them. Kaleem was furious. "You'll pay the price for this." Ives sneered. "It's you who will pay for your foolishness. Remember, these people weren't killed by me. They were killed by you." His soldiers began to attack the caravan's defensive line, and naturally, the guards wouldn't sit still. They immediately started a defensive counterattack. They did possess some strength, and for a short time, Ives' troops couldn't take them down. Kaleem stood at the front of the line, wielding a giant sword, wielding it energetically, and with each swing taking a head. He swiftly cleared the area in front of him, leaving the ground littered with the bodies of 7 or 8 soldiers. Before his giant sword, these soldiers, even fully armored, couldn't withstand a single strike. The bow and arrow unit focused fire on him, but Kaleem was also in full armor, and its quality was extraordinary. These arrows couldn't harm him at all. Kaleem faced the arrow's volley, slashing one soldier after another with his giant sword. Before long, no one dared to approach the place where Kaleem stood guard. Ives glanced in this direction, slowly rode over on his horse, then dismounted and walked out from the crowd. "Let me handle him." Kaleem glared at him, muscles tensed. He was close to becoming a great knight, but not actually one, and compared to Ives, there was still a vast power disparity. Yet he showed no fear, eyes firm, holding the giant sword steadily, ready to attack at any moment. Ives held a long sword, slowly walking to stand before Kaleem. "If I were as wealthy as you, I'd be lying at home, not out here seeking death. I'm a noble, but also a knight. I'll never indulge in a decaying life. Upholding justice is the truth I follow," Kaleem declared firmly, then swung his giant sword fiercely at Ives. This strike was grand and swift. Ives held the long sword in one hand, blocking it steadily. He stood upright the entire time, without a hint of movement, indicating he used only a minuscule amount of strength. Seeing his strike blocked, Kaleem swiftly shifted the direction of his sword and launched several consecutive attacks. But Ives easily fended off each of Kaleem's strikes, as if he was playing. Everyone could see that although Kaleem was powerful, compared to Ives, the strength gap between them was insurmountable. A great knight is far more powerful than you imagine. You've probably never seen the true power of a great knight. Otherwise, you wouldn't foolishly challenge me, Ives sneered. Ives took a step back, then said, "Now it's my turn." He took a deep breath, then a rumbling sound came from within, and he transformed into a shadow and charged out. Kaleem reacted swiftly, almost instinctively moving his giant sword, but still, a blossom of blood burst forth. The next moment, Ives appeared at Kaleem's side, and there wasn't a trace of blood on the longsword in his hand. Kaleem glanced down, noticing a bloody hole at his ribs, with blood flowing out. His heavy armor was pierced right through. Even Kaleem hadn't clearly seen Ives' sword strike. Clutching his wound, he endured the pain and flashed away from his original position, leaning against the wagon behind him. Ives praised. "Quite the reaction, or should I say, your instinctive response is impressive. Your eyes probably couldn't catch my strike, but your body's instincts sensed the direction of danger, so you dodged the lethal position and barely survived." Kaleem spat out some bloody froth, then, without a word, clutched the long sword with both hands and took the initiative to attack, slashing at Ives. Due to the wound still bleeding, as he leaped, the blood from his wound gushed out more quickly. This strike was even more powerful than before, and Ives could only parry this attack by gripping his sword with both hands. The next second, Ives vanished, and immediately after, a wound appeared on Kaleem's left wrist, his armor again pierced through. I've seemed in no hurry to kill him, holding his long sword and laughing. Killing you with one sword would be such a waste. After all, for a man of your caliber, I usually don't even get a chance to flatter you. With that, another slash, and Kaleem's knee was injured again. Kaleem immediately fell to one knee, using the giant sword to support himself upright. I've seemed displeased seeing Kaleem in such a state, and promptly struck another blow to disable Kaleem's other leg. This time Kaleem could no longer support himself, and he knelt completely to the ground. Breathing heavily, Kaleem didn't utter a word. If you had agreed to invest a little money in the project I mentioned back then, not only would you not be dying now, but you'd also get a share of these goods. I've spoke in a relaxed tone, as if chatting with a friend. Meanwhile, the battle between the army and the merchant caravan continued. The caravan's guard were starting to struggle, with defenses in some areas already broken, allowing a large number of soldiers to rush in, killing anyone they saw amidst screams and wails. I won't collude with you. Has Duke Theodore also joined? Kaleem raised his head, using the giant sword to stabilize himself from falling. I've shook his head and said, "Of course not. He looks down on small businesses like this and disdains doing such business. Let those." Kaleem was speaking when his eyes suddenly widened. He looked down to see the blade of a long sword protruding from his chest. Ives withdrew the long sword, coldly watching Kaleem fall weakly as his eyes gradually lost their luster. He sneered, then shouted to the soldiers around him, "Hurry up, don't let any of them escape." Herag stood calmly behind a wagon, wearing light armor, still chewing on smoked fish. Ed squatted on the ground, terrified. "My lord, we should run away." "Run." Herag laughed. "Look around. We're already surrounded, and there are archers outside. Run out, and you'll have your head shot through immediately. If it's a skilled archer, he'll shoot an arrow into your eye, and then the arrow will mash your brain into pulp." As he spoke, he tore off a piece of fish flesh from the smoked fish and quickly devoured it. What should we do?" Ed, seeing Herag still in the mood for fish, was anxious as an ant on a hot pan. Herag naturally wasn't worried, as these people posed no threat to him. He could leave whenever he wanted. He had witnessed the fight between Kaleem and Ives earlier, and also saw Kaleem's death. Herag didn't step in to help. If it weren't for Kaleem's foolishness, the caravan wouldn't have lost so many people. There was no way he would rescue him. Luo Kuei, being a merchant familiar with industry rules from years of business, understood that if the goods were left, at worst they'd suffer a huge loss, but at least their lives would be spared, and the people in the caravan would survive. As long as they're alive, there's a chance to earn it back. But Kaleem, the fool, recognized Ives and blurted it out publicly. This forced Ives into killing them all to silence witnesses. Initially, I've just intended to take advantage to gain something without intending to kill everyone, as that would only create more trouble for him. But now, because of Kaleem's blunder, Ives was forced to take the dangerous route of massacre. Some adventurers in the caravan saw the situation turning bad and attempted to escape in the chaos. However, as soon as they sprinted in one direction, a volley of arrows rained down, turning them into pincushions on the ground. This time, Ives was determined to kill everyone. He wouldn't let a single person escape. If what happened here became known to Duke Theodore would definitely execute him in public to protect his own reputation. Herag was still enjoying his smoked fish when the line of defense behind him was breached and a group of soldiers poured in. They spotted Herag, who was eating fish, and their faces showed strange expressions. Then they rushed toward him with various weapons. Herag sighed. "I shield. Mana shield. Dark energy shield." 3 shields instantly enveloped him, the blue, white, and black swirling around, fully encasing Herag. Herag drew his long sword and gazed at the soldiers. He had no intention of using magic. Conserving a bit of mana wherever possible was prudent. Why waste magic power when a sword could solve the fight? The soldiers halted in their tracks, unsure of what to do as they looked at Herag encased in shields. Herag didn't care what they thought, charging forward with his sword with incredible speed, toppling a large swath of soldiers on the spot. The soldiers launched a counterattack, but their swords and blades had no effect on Herag, unable to even crack a shield. A round of arrows was also fired, but they bounced off Herag's shields without any impact. In just a few seconds, the ground was littered with soldier corpses. The other soldiers, witnessing Herag's deadly efficiency, began to fear. Most of them were unaware of wizards' existence and had never seen magic firsthand. Seeing all their attacks ineffective against Herag, a sliver of despair surfaced in their hearts, swiftly followed by thoughts of retreat and withdrawal. They are just soldiers, also humans, and will have fear. When facing an incomprehensible, invincible existence, they can only choose to flee. After Herag killed all the charging soldiers, he did not pursue those who fled. At this time, soldiers from other areas noticed the situation here and began to come over to support. In their understanding, no matter how powerful the enemy is, as long as there are many of them and they cooperate well, they can take down the enemy. Even a great knight must be wary of the power of an army. Herag looked at the approaching soldiers, expressionless, holding a long sword heading straight for the crowd. He was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, unstoppable. These soldiers were like paper, unable to withstand even a single strike from Herag. Ed, hiding under the carriage, was dumbfounded seeing this scene. Especially after seeing Herag covered in various colors of shields, he muttered and began to bow, continuously knocking his head on the ground beneath the carriage. Luo Kuei also noticed the commotion here, seeing firsthand how Herag shielded himself and then wreaked havoc. Mystic, this word popped into his head. Luo Kuei had been in the trading business for many years, seeing and hearing everything. But a mystic, it was the first time he had seen it with his own eyes. Indeed, as powerful as the rumors said, ordinary people had no chance against him. It was a complete massacre on one side. In his impression, Herag was just a fallen miner, noble who used much of his savings for a chance to join the convoy to Dora's kingdom. Luo Kuei saw Herag carrying a sword, so he observed Herag's hands, finding no calluses at all. He thought Herag probably had no real skill, the sword being mere decoration, as many nobles do. Especially fallen nobles who always use flashy decorations to show they haven't completely fallen. Anyone who seriously trains in swordsmanship would have calluses, a feature easily observed. When Kaleem said that, Luo Kuei felt like he was falling into an ice cavern, almost losing hope when the army broke through the defenses. Then Herag suddenly emerged, slaughtered everyone, and turned out to be a mystic, something Luo Kuei could not have imagined. On the other side, as Herag was slaughtering, Ives also noticed him. Mystic, Ives instantly recognized Herag's identity and was shocked. Having just been surprised by Kaleem, he never expected there was another mystic in the convoy. Such figures only exist in rumors, and yet he just happened to encounter one. Ives initially intended to kill them all, but with another mystic he not only couldn't do that, but also had to consider if he could survive himself. The rest of the convoy must be killed, but this mystic might just be a coincidence being in the convoy. These mystics generally don't meddle in the affairs of ordinary people, and even if he knows about this, he probably won't spread it around. There is room to maneuver. After weighing his options, Ives quickly had an idea. He moved toward Herag and shouted, "Stop! Show no disrespect to this gentleman." The soldiers around Herag were dumbfounded by this, clearly seeing him as the one hunting them. Hearing Ives' command, they began sprinting away from Herag. After the soldiers ran far away, Herag also stopped, not continuing the slaughter. Ives cautiously approached, removing his helmet, and smiled. "Sir, it's our first meeting. I am Ives Brand, Knight Commander under Duke Theodore. I wonder if you are acquainted with the Duke." Herag replied expressionlessly, "I don't know him. Sir, I truly apologize. I didn't know you were with the convoy. It's a grave offense. How about this? To show my apology, all the goods and property of this convoy are yours. What do you think?" To please Herag, I've abandoned all interests, only wanting to survive. Approaching Herag as a great knight, he instinctively felt a great danger, a threat that sparked a sliver of fear from deep within. "I'm not interested." Herag naturally rejected his offer, wanting only to reach Dora's kingdom as soon as possible. Accepting the goods would mean implicitly agreeing with Ives and others' massacre of everyone in the convoy. He had traveled with the convoy, and they had no enmity with him, even taking some care along the way. Although they were paid, there was no grudge. Ives was stunned for a moment, and then said, "Since you are not interested in these, may I know where you are headed? I can arrange someone to guide you." Herag did not respond, but turned to look behind Ives, a look of curiosity on his face. Ives, seeing him staring behind him, was puzzled and turned around, witnessing an astonishing scene. The previously deceased Kaleem was now emitting a milky white glow from his corpse. Herag intently watched, observing many light energy particles automatically flowing into Kaleem's body. These light energy particles quickly repaired Kaleem's body upon entering. "Shenlan, check if Kaleem's body has any demonized items or other magical source." Herag was puzzled, sensing no magical fluctuations from Kaleem. Kaleem was an ordinary person with no training in any meditation method, yet these light energy particles automatically entered his body and healed him. If it were a wizard specializing in light element, Herag could understand. But Kaleem was merely a night level. How could he possibly have such precise energy particle manipulation skills? "No magical source detected," Shenlan responded. Shenlan's detection matched Herag's observation, with no magical source on Kaleem's entire body. Yet these light energy particles just autonomously entered his body, healing him. "Are you the child of light?" Herag couldn't find a reason, so he sarcastically remarked. As more light energy particles gathered, Kaleem was entirely enveloped in the milky white glow. Ives, witnessing this miraculous scene, felt a tinge of unease. The surrounding fights gradually ceased. Everyone watched Kaleem, now a white cocoon of light. Kaleem's corpse began to float, radiating a strong white light, yet the light wasn't glaring. Many people had already laid down their weapons and started kneeling. In their view, in Herag's eyes, Kaleem was presently enveloped by a vast sea of light energy particles, his entire being soaked in an ocean of light energy particles. The wounds on Kaleem's body quickly healed, the injuries closing rapidly, leaving only traces of blood on the surface, while he was actually completely restored. Countless light energy particles infused into Kaleem's body, not only repairing him, but continuously strengthening his flesh. Kaleem slowly opened his eyes, feeling a warm sensation throughout his body. His consciousness had just awoken from endless darkness, still a bit dazed, unaware of what had transpired. His body, surrounded by voluminous light energy particles, began to slowly descend from midair, eventually landing steadily on the ground. Kaleem sat up with a puzzled expression, looking at his hands. The marks where his armor was pierced remained, and there was a hole in the armor at his chest where a wound had been. He touched the wound, finding it completely healed with not even a scar remaining. "Wasn't I dead? Why is this happening?" Kaleem was utterly confused. His expression suddenly showed a hint of surprise as he clenched his fist and exclaimed, "I've broken through to a great night." "Shenlan, check Kaleem's body data," Herag said, intrigued by Kaleem's resurrection and curious about his current strength. Kaleem, Power 5.1, Agility 4.2, Constitution 6.1, Spirit 2.7, containing unknown light energy within his body. Herag was somewhat taken aback by these figures. They were already more powerful than those of an ordinary Great Knight, and Kaleem had just broken through. Typically, the stats for an average Great Knight would be around 3 to 4, but Kaleem's breakthrough stats soared directly to the 5 or 6 level. It should have something to do with those light energy particles earlier. His body contains light energy, which is different from magic power and likely belongs to another power system. Even Herag must now take Kaleem seriously, given his current body data and light energy. His true potential is unknown. The most perplexing aspect for Herag was why so many light energy particles automatically aided Kaleem. Handsome, strong, and yet foolish, able to resurrect and become even stronger. This guy must be the protagonist, Herag speculated. He contemplated this seriously. If something like the world will truly existed, then Kaleem could very well be favored by it. Otherwise, it was hard to explain why the light energy particles would automatically save Kaleem, implying that even if not favored by the world will, Kaleem must have some connection to light element power. Captain Kaleem, are you all right? Kaleem's team members immediately rushed over, surrounding him. They had been fiercely engaged, unable to split themselves to save Kaleem when he fell gravely injured. The anomaly surrounding Kaleem caused a temporary halt in the battle, offering them a chance to regroup and solidify their formation. Kaleem smiled and said, "Not only am I all right, but I've now become a great knight." The other members of the adventure group immediately cheered, fully aware of the implications. Any adventuring group or team with a great knight instantly rises to the top tier in terms of strength rating. After exchanging a few words with his team, Kaleem said, "Enough about that for now. There are still matters to resolve." He stepped forward from the crowd, looking at Ives. "Ives, I never thought you'd go so far as to kill everyone to silence them." Kaleem then looked around at the corpses scattered about, his face full of guilt. "It's my fault, too impulsive, careless, leading to their deaths. Ives, I won't kill you. After all, you are Duke Theodore's knight commander. I will personally escort you back and have you face the gallows." With that, he pulled out the giant sword embedded nearby in the ground. Ives laughed. "Send me to the gallows? You've just ascended to a great knight. I've been one for many years. You're still too green." Despite his words, Ives prepared for battle without delay, donning his helmet and unsheathing his longsword, fully concentrating on Kaleem. Kaleem gripped his giant sword with both hands, emitting a white glow from his body. Even the giant sword was shrouded in white light. "Light Knight? Impossible. You're not with the Light Church," Ives exclaimed, his face awash with shock. Light Knight. It was Herag's first time hearing the term, as his knowledge in this area was rather limited. Ives' expression turned grave, feeling immense pressure within. Kaleem spoke in a deep voice. "So this is the power of a Light Knight? Strange." He charged at Ives, the giant sword in hand. Ives reacted swiftly too, both hands gripping his longsword as he lunged forward. Kaleem's move was simple, delivering a straightforward, unadorned vertical slash. However, this strike shone with dazzling white light, dissipating the white mist, while the sunlight made Kaleem's entire being glimmer brightly. In the next moment, a cold gleam flashed, leaving everyone but Herag unable to see precisely what occurred. Ives' long sword shattered into several pieces, his right hand flying off and landing close by. Only upon seeing his arm detach and hit the ground did Ives begin to scream in agony. Kaleem promptly swung the giant sword to disable Ives' left hand. Ives' left hand was grotesquely twisted, clearly with broken bones. "I said I wouldn't kill you. I'll take you personally to the gallows to atone for those who have died." Kaleem thrust his giant sword into the ground, speaking each word deliberately. Ives gritted his teeth, looking up with spite and malice in his eyes as he glared at Kaleem. Kaleem's team quickly gathered around, borrowing chains from the caravan to bind Ives securely, also rendering his knees useless. Though Ives had the strength to resist, he did nothing, recognizing its futility. He passively allowed them to tie him up and cage him within an iron cell. This particular cell was specially made, exceptionally sturdy, sometimes used by caravans to contain demons, leaving the current state of Ives with almost no chance of escape. As Kaleem secured Ives' soldiers, sensing the situation's dire turn, fled in all directions. Their escape routes suggested none would return to Storm City, probably turning into true bandits instead. Kaleem did not assign anyone to pursue them. The number of soldiers was too many, and with the caravan's heavy casualties, they were far too overwhelmed to chase them down. This battle caused heavy losses for the caravan, with as many as 62 deaths. Among these 62, 25 were ordinary people, and the rest were all guards who died in battle. Kaleem's adventurer group, lost 13 people. They faced the most enemies among the adventurer groups. Because they were well-equipped, the army deliberately allocated considerable forces to deal with them during the attack. The other adventurers lost 24 members, most of whom were on the weaker side. Adventurers are especially shrewd. Most of them wouldn't really risk their lives, focusing instead on surviving safely. With this mindset, those slightly stronger could generally survive since the battle didn't last long. Kaleem and Luo Kuei commanded the caravan, arranging for their men to handle various tasks. Kaleem now had considerable prestige. The previous scene had left an indelible impression on these people. Seeing the matter was resolved, Herag went to find Ed hiding under the wagon and kicked him on the butt. "Get out quickly and prepare to drive us out of here." Ed promptly climbed out, nodded, and smiled. "Okay, sir." Since witnessing Herag's incredible powers, Ed held him in reverence akin to the gods. Kaleem, with his whole body glowing white, indeed looked splendid, but Ed believed Herag was even more formidable. Herag returned to his carriage and was about to get in when Kaleem ran over. "Are you Sir Jellant? Thank you for saving us at that crucial moment. Otherwise, who knows how many might have died," Kaleem said gratefully. Herag glanced at him, nodded, and said, He was curious about the kind of power Kaleem had, but had little interest in the man himself. He didn't like dealing with idiots, so he gave a curt reply and got into the carriage. To Herag, befriending someone like Kaleem might be even more dangerous than making him an enemy, as who knows when such a person might cause your death. Kaleem laughed awkwardly, but didn't mind. I guess mystics always have peculiar temperaments. He hadn't seen Herag in action, but the discussion with adventure group members made him realize Jellant was a mystic who had just killed many soldiers. Upon learning this, Kaleem immediately came to express his gratitude. 3 hours later, the caravan set out again, but this time there was much less laughter and more of a somber atmosphere. Luo Kuei sat at the front of the lead carriage, looking worriedly ahead, eyes unfocused. His longtime business partner had died in the recent battle, and when they found him, only half of his head remained. After this run, I'm going back to the countryside to enjoy life. He remembered his friend saying before they set off. 5 days later, the caravan finally left the Dragon Ridge Highland area and entered a plain after descending the mountain. Ives was still confined in a cage, given only a little water daily, and fed once every 3 days to keep him alive. As Luo Kuei put it, a great knight doesn't starve to death so easily. Ives was extremely weak, having been injured, with his limbs crippled, and starving. His spirit was at rock bottom. Herag thought they should just finish him off with a blade. Keeping him around would only cause trouble for themselves. Because he accepted Luo Kuei's job, Kaleem felt he had to complete this mission and safely escort the caravan to the Doors Kingdom. He also needed to escort Ives back to Storm City to meet the gallows, and thus assigned 2 members of the adventurer group to keep a close eye on Ives the entire way. Upon entering the plains, the caravan encountered more towns, no longer as sparsely populated as the Dragon Ridge Highland. The caravan supplies could now be replenished easily along the way, no longer a concern. Even though the caravan had lost quite a number of people, its defensive strength was still considerable, especially after Kaleem's breakthrough to become a great knight. The journey saw much fewer troubles. Some oblivious bandits did try to take a bite of this fat piece, but to no avail. Soon, a month had passed. Herag sat calmly in the carriage and slowly opened his eyes. Shenlan, check my body data. Herag Merlin, strength 3.9, agility 4.0, constitution 5.5, spirit 12.4, magic power 100%. Herag exhaled. The meditation practice of the 7th star was complete. There was a significant boost in all physical stats, partly due to completing the 7th star and the continuous reinforcement from the dark energy particles. Just 3 stars left to illuminate all points of the first array map. I wonder what effects it will have by then. His current concern was reaching the meditation practice requirement for the 3rd-class wizard apprentice without a stone giant's heart to refine magic potion. The stone giant's heart couldn't be stored long and couldn't be prepared while at the academy. Herag wasn't sure if stone giants existed in the Door's kingdom, and if he met the advancement requirements without obtaining their heart while the academy had no information, he'd have to rely on Shenlan inference to find substitutes for the stone giant heart in magic potion materials. Magic potion recipes aren't set in stone, and many ingredients can be substituted, sometimes resulting in even better effects. Because some materials are extremely rare and not universally applicable, mature magic potion recipes need to consider feasibility. So some recipes replace rare ingredients with less effective but easier to obtain ones. This is common in magic potion, with wizards often experimenting with alternative materials in various recipes, where many peculiar formulas are born from such experiments. Having completed the meditation practice for the 7th star, Herag closed his eyes again to start the meditation practice for the 8th star. I've had a difficult time, as being a great knight, his injuries healed quickly. But with someone always watching him, the moment his injuries nearly healed, they would break his limbs again. This repeat torture left Ives in a terrible state. Due to the rare bandit raids on this journey, Kaleem had more energy to keep an eye on Ives. Ives also sought a chance to escape, but found no opportunities at all. His injuries would always relapse, leaving no hope in sight. However, he didn't give up, his will to survive growing stronger, just waiting for the right chance. Half a month later, in the middle of the night, just 2 weeks away from reaching Door's kingdom, Herag, while meditating, suddenly opened his eyes and looked towards the direction of the cage holding Ives. Ives was slumped inside, hands hanging weakly, just like before. Watching him was a girl named Lizzie, a member of Kaleem's adventure group and an ardent fan of his. Tonight was her turn to guard Ives, a rather boring chore. Ives had his limbs broken many times, with no ability to escape, leaving no pressure on the guard. Lizzie wore her hair in a ponytail, with a long sword strapped to her waist. She always wanted to learn swordsmanship from Kaleem, but Kaleem used a giant sword, which was not suitable for her. Despite the boring task, she remained dutiful, pacing back and forth beside the iron cage, occasionally checking on Ives's condition. This task was assigned by Kaleem, and she was determined to complete it perfectly, not wanting to leave a bad impression on Kaleem. The clouds were thick tonight, and the moon was hidden behind them, making the night particularly dark. "Water," Ives suddenly uttered weakly. Lizzie immediately turned her head and asked, "What?" "Water. Just give me a little water. I feel like I'm dying," Ives said weakly, gasping heavily like he could die at any moment. Lizzie refused. "No, you can only drink water once a day, and you already had it today." Ives pleaded, "Please, I'm getting weaker by the day. Drinking water once a day is no longer enough. I know my body best. Cough, cough. Just a little water, or I'm really going to die." He spoke intermittently, exhaling more than inhaling, looking like he was really about to go. Lizzie hesitated. Kaleem wants him alive to send him personally to the gallows. If he dies now, Kaleem will surely be displeased. "Just a little water. Then I'll get you some." She remembered the water bucket was not far away, and people would scoop a ladle of water to drink whenever they felt thirsty. Lizzie went over in a few steps, scooped a ladle of water, and steadily carried it to the iron cage. The iron cage was small and low on the ground. Lizzie held the ladle above the cage and said, "Open your mouth." "Thank you," Ives quietly said before slowly opening his mouth. Lizzie started tilting the ladle, and water began to drip down. Suddenly, a minuscule dark shadow flashed by. Lizzie's eyes widened in surprise, her beautiful eyes bulging round. Then she lunged forward, collapsing on top of the iron cage. A bloody hole appeared on her forehead, and another on the back of her head, from which crimson blood flowed. Ives looked coldly at the corpse, glanced around, then laboriously extended his deformed left hand, struggling to hook the keys on Lizzie's waist that included the key to the iron cage. He had been hiding a tiny bone shard in his mouth all along. Ives usually ate the same food as slaves, which was leftovers from slop bucket. The slop bucket had mixed types of food, and one day he found a small bone shard. After finding the bone, He immediately hid it nonchalantly under his tongue. The guards watching him never checked his mouth, so the bone had been hidden for more than 20 days and was crucial for his escape. As Lizzie approached to pour water, the moment he opened his mouth, he used all his strength to shoot the bone shard, piercing through Lizzie's head. With experience in concealing his progress in recovering his limbs, he deliberately masked the progress of his left hand's recovery, as a delay of 1 or 2 days wouldn't be noticed, merely thought to be the result of long-term injury, healing progressively slower. Although he was crippled and gravely injured, he was still a great knight. Even without the use of his arms and legs, he still had his mouth and chest to exert strength. To deal with someone like Lizzie, who wasn't even a knight, he only needed functional body parts above his neck. It was at the moment when he shot through Lizzie's head that Herag sensed the commotion through Shenlan. I've strained to extend his hand outside the cage, struggling to hook the bunch of keys. He pressed his whole body against the cage, just to extend his arm a little further. As he was about to hook the keys with his fingers, they were snatched away by a hand that suddenly appeared. I've stared blankly, raising his head to see Herag smiling at him. "Give me. I'm begging you." I've pleaded genuinely this time. Herag smiled. "Seems like you really want to get out, so focused that you didn't notice me walking up next to you." "Please." I've pleaded softly. He didn't dare speak loudly, knowing that alerting anyone else would dash all hopes of escape. Herag spread his hands. "Sorry, I won't meddle in your affairs. I'm stopping you from escaping only because it would delay our travel if you got away." He didn't care whether Ives lived or died, nor did he care about his escape. The main issue was that if Ives escaped, Kaleem would surely make every effort to recapture him upon finding Lizzie dead, and that would definitely disrupt the caravan schedule. If Herag had to travel alone, it would still be half a month's journey, and preparing supplies would also be a hassle. So to minimize trouble for himself and avoid disrupting the journey, he decisively stopped Ives's escape attempt. "Kaleem, your captive's trying to escape, and you're still sleeping?" Herag's voice wasn't loud, but it was particularly clear amidst the quiet night. Several nearby caravans immediately lit up, and some people, disheveled and drowsy, grabbed lamps to get off and check the situation. Kaleem rushed over and immediately saw Lizzie collapsed on the cage with eyes wide in anger. "Lizzie!" He rushed forward to hold Lizzie's body, and after glancing at the wound on Lizzie's head, he felt his heart sink, knowing she was beyond saving. "Who did this?" Kaleem roared in fury. He always treated Lizzie like a sister. To him, Lizzie was a pure and cute girl whom he took care of in many ways. With Lizzie's tragic death, Kaleem was overwhelmed with anger and sadness. Ives quickly crawled to the other side of the cage, not daring to look at Kaleem. "Was it you?" Kaleem noticed Ives's movement in the cage and shouted angrily. By now, almost everyone in the caravan was awake, and many people approached, with several women gasping and covering their mouths upon seeing Lizzie's body in Kaleem's arms. Ives shook his head frantically. "No, it wasn't. It was Ives who did it. The weapon was probably something bone-related hidden in his mouth," Herag said from the side. Kaleem glanced at the wound again, then looked at the ladle on the ground and the traces of water, quickly piecing together the entire event based on Herag's information. "Ives," he roared, placing Lizzie's body aside, then brutally tore apart the iron cage, pulling Ives out like a chick. Kaleem grabbed Ives and slammed him onto the ground with great force. A clear cracking sound emerged, and Ives was bent. It was apparent that his back had been broken. Kaleem then punched Ives in the chest, causing him to spit out a lot of blood. It was unclear how many of his ribs were broken. Kaleem paused, ready to continue, then slowly calmed down. Herag glanced at him and said, "You asked someone who isn't even a knight to guard a great knight. No matter what, a great knight is still a great knight. How can a normal person deal with that?" Kaleem nodded, showing a look of remorse on his face. "I didn't consider things carefully. It's my responsibility. Starting today, I'll personally guard him." "Still guarding him? Just kill him with one stroke and save the trouble," Herag said somewhat speechlessly. Kaleem said with determination, "I must send him to the gallows and execute him in front of everyone in Storm City, Otherwise, I wouldn't be worthy of those souls who died by his hand. Herag nonchalantly replied, "Suit yourself, as long as it doesn't delay our journey." Kaleem nodded silently, crouched to pick up Lizzie's body, and walked towards the nearby woods, seemingly preparing to bury her there. Herag returned to the carriage and continued his meditation. Ives was tied up again by the members of Kaleem's adventure group, this time even more securely, with his crippled left hand bound behind his back. They also found a new iron cage, as the previous one was broken by Kaleem, and put Ives inside it. As Kaleem was digging a pit with a shovel, the adventure group sent 6 people to guard Ives. Kaleem silently dug the pit with the shovel, not saying a word throughout the process. His companions nearby offered help, but he refused, insisting on digging the pit himself to bury Lizzie. The other people in the caravan watched the scene like a farce and went back to sleep after watching. After that night, Ives' situation became more miserable. The once daily water supply became twice a day, and meals were given every 3 or 4 days. Kaleem kept his word, staying by the cage and personally guarding Ives. Kaleem was somewhat dispirited during this time, speaking less, seemingly filled with guilt over Lizzie's death, unable to let go. What's the point of feeling guilty? You should have dealt with the problem earlier, or else it would harm both others and yourself. Herag shook his head, grumbling in his heart while eating a meal after stepping off the carriage. The following half-month journey was quite peaceful. Ives had completely lost hope. Even the food he ate was checked to ensure no bones or similar items were used as weapons. Kaleem, to be safe, knocked out all of Ives' teeth, leaving none. He did this mainly because Herag casually mentioned, "There's no bone in the meal, but he still has some in his mouth." As soon as Herag said this, Ives stared at him with wide eyes. Upon hearing this, Kaleem pondered, and soon there were continuous screams from Ives. After the half-month journey, the caravan finally reached the Doris Kingdom's border. Brown City is a border city on the eastern side of the Doris Kingdom, with a population of around 5,000. Although the population is small, the entry inspection is very strict. Everyone entering must have their identity documents strictly checked. Without official entry procedures from the Violet Kingdom, they cannot enter the Doris Kingdom. Members of Kaleem's adventurer group and other adventurers did not qualify to enter the Doris Kingdom since they hadn't completed the necessary procedures. After escorting the caravan to Brown City, their mission was considered completed. After completing some handover procedures with Luo Kue, Kaleem immediately set off with his adventurer group members to return. Of course, Ives was certainly brought along. Many people in the caravan were preparing to enter the country and lined up for inspection. Herag was also in the queue, and the people around him kept a distance, fearing to offend him. Ed stood at a distance, calling out somewhat sadly, "Sir." Herag glanced at him, thought for a moment, then waved to Ed. Upon seeing this, Ed immediately ran over. "Do you have any instructions, sir? Your slavery documents are with Luo Kue?" Herag asked. "Yes, sir." Ed nodded, not understanding why Herag was asking this. Herag pondered and said to Ed, "Help me hold my place in line. I need to take care of something." Ed obediently got in line, feeling that Herag didn't need him to hold the spot. Herag would only be gone for a moment, and others wouldn't dare complain or have any opinions upon his return. Everyone in line here was from the caravan and knew how many soldiers Herag had killed alone. Herag found Luo Kue and said, "How much for Ed? I'll buy him." He thought since Ed had driven for him for 3 months and he was quite satisfied, helping him shed his slave identity before departure would be a trivial task. Luo Kue was a bit surprised, but then smiled. "Since Jellant likes him, consider it a gift to you. No need to discuss money." He then instructed his men to bring Ed's slave identity documents and handed them to Herag. Herag was unreserved, smiling. "Thank you, then." After returning to the line, he gave the slave identity documents to Ed. "What must be done to remove your slave status?" Hearing this, Ed was incredulous and said excitedly, Don't get so excited. Just tell me." Herag patted his shoulder. Ed wiped his excited tears. "As long as the master agrees, I can obtain a new identity in a place. However what? Herag asked. Ed pointed to the slave mark on his face. With this, others will still see me as a slave, even if I have a legitimate resident identity. With a slave mark, it's indelible unless the whole piece of flesh is removed. But Ed's mark was on his face, and it covered a large area, so it was impossible to remove it without leaving half a face. Herag nodded. I understand. You follow me for now. I'll handle the mark later. For Herag, erasing the mark wasn't hard. Letting Shenlan deduce a random potion formula could yield countless recipes to remove the mark. Herag wasn't just proficient in alchemy. He also knew typical medicine, which was basic introductory knowledge in magic potion and herbalism. Shenlan's database stored countless basic medical knowledge, thanks to Herag's effort to input this knowledge while in Nosenin Academy's library. Herag would not stay in Brown City, because the border was not so peaceful and the people were quite complicated. He needed to go a bit further into the Doris Kingdom, and for a carriage, a driver was necessary. Ed was just right. Herag planned to settle in a suitable place and simultaneously conduct magic potion experiments while inquiring about the moonstone grass. The moonstone grass, like dragon's beard grass, is a high-tier magic potion material, extremely rare. He only knew that the Doris Kingdom produced moonstone grass, but was not sure exactly where. The Doris Kingdom is so large, he didn't know where to start looking for a while. The queue for the border check was moving very slowly. Herag had waited for more than half an hour before it was his turn. Gellant Logan, the one responsible for the check, was a middle-aged man. After carefully reviewing the identity proof and entry documents, he looked up at Herag. The age and external features roughly matched, and after confirming that there were no issues, he stamped the document, allowing Herag to legally enter. In this era, there were no photographs. Identity proofs only recorded general physical characteristics, and a simple comparison was considered a completed identity check. This Jalot's physical characteristics were similar to Herag's, and most importantly, they both had black hair. In this world, black hair was rare, and no one knew where Milo found a nobleman with black hair. So Herag's identity didn't need much scrutiny. As soon as you saw black hair, it was unmistakably him, a very distinctive feature. I also have a slave. Herag showed Ed's slave identity proof, pointing to Ed behind him. The middle-aged man glanced at Ed and didn't even look at the slave identity proof, directly said, one slave is fine. If there were more, it would involve slave trading, which requires extra tax. You can go in. Herag took back his stamped identity proof, returned to the carriage, and said to Ed, continue driving. Yes, master. Ed was very excited, jumped directly onto the carriage, and grabbed the reins. The carriage slowly entered Brown City. After Herag bought some supplies at several shops in the city, he left Brown City straight away. Herag sat in the carriage, holding a map of the entire Doris Kingdom, marked with various cities and major roads. His destination was a city named Ryan, located at the intersection of several major transport routes, a transportation hub. Because of its geographical location, Ryan had been a large city since ancient times. The Doris Kingdom now had stable governance with very few major disturbances. A stable kingdom leads to population growth and more prosperous businesses. Ryan had a resident population of 70 to 80,000, and all kinds of goods were available in the city, making life convenient. Brown was not far from Ryan, and the carriage could reach there in 6 to 7 days along a major road. Herag occasionally lifted the curtain to observe the surroundings while on the road. He discovered that the Doris Kingdom was indeed unusual, as he rarely saw any displaced people. There were often villages alongside the major roads, and the villagers seemed to be in good spirits, rarely looking pale or thin. However, it could also be because these villages were near the main roads, so their basic living security was not a concern. The Doris Kingdom, under the jurisdiction of Dream Island. Herag recalled the information he had gained before departing. The Doris Kingdom was within the jurisdictional range of the wizard organization Dream Island. Dream Island was the wizard organization Dino belonged to, and Herag arrived at the Kala continent by his ship. He had spent several months on the ship and had a pretty good impression of Dino. The main activity area of Dream Island was at sea, with relatively little contact with other wizard organizations like Moonlight Forest and Green Cottage. The west coast of the Doris Kingdom had a long coastline, with numerous ports, making sea trade very prosperous. Every day, countless ships set off from the west coast, though not every ship could safely return to port. 7 days later, Herag could hear the bustling noise of a market from a distance. He lifted the curtain to sit at the carriage head and saw a lively scene. Ryan City had tall city walls, with markets on both sides of the main road outside the walls. Countless people were setting up stalls and selling, with people coming and going, creating a din of voices. Herag observed for a moment. These people's outfits were obviously different and clearly from all corners of the land, hence the varied clothing styles. As soon as his carriage approached the market area, some merchants came over, holding their goods, and began to shout to sell. "Sir, take a look at the quality fabric. The fine liquor from Feng County. Young brother, would you like to try some?" These people crowded around, forcing Ed to slow down, otherwise he might accidentally run over them. Selling fabric and liquor was one thing, but a wily-looking uncle with a towel wrapped around his head also came over, whispering, "Young man, I have beautiful girls here. Do you want to take a look? I have all styles." Herag smiled, pulled down the curtain, and returned to lie in the carriage. Seeing Herag return to the carriage, these merchants didn't continue to push their sales. They didn't expect a slave driving the carriage to purchase their goods. The carriage halted at the city gate. Herag jumped down from the carriage, handed over his various documents to the soldiers at the gate. After a careful check by the soldier confirming nothing was wrong, he was allowed to enter. Upon entering Ryan City, Herag's first impression was that the roads here were very spacious, wide enough to accommodate 3 carriages side by side. Herag first found an inn to settle in. He originally wanted to book 2 rooms, but Ed insisted on staying next to the carriage. He said he was afraid things might get stolen from the carriage, but Herag felt it was because Ed didn't think he deserved to stay in an inn room, which didn't match his identity. In this era, many concepts were deeply ingrained, and Herag knew if he insisted too much on his own way, he might be seen as an oddity, so he might as well adapt to local customs. Herag came to the first floor and saw the innkeeper was also present. The innkeeper was a thin, middle-aged man, who greeted Herag enthusiastically as he came down. "Guest, are you here to order some food? Let us know what you want, and we'll bring it to your room once it's prepared." Just prepare any 2 dishes and bring them to my room later. Also, make sure to prepare something for the slave who came with me," said Herag. The innkeeper listened attentively, quickly wrote it down on a piece of paper, and handed it to an assistant beside him. "Please wait a bit. It will be over soon." Leaning against the table, Herag continued chatting with the innkeeper. "Do you know where I can rent a house? Are you looking to rent a house? I can help introduce you. I know quite a few people in that area," the innkeeper said with a smile. Herag nodded. "Yeah, what type of house would the guest like to rent? I can help introduce the right person to you," the innkeeper said. Herag pondered for a moment and said, "Preferably a larger yard, in a quieter area, not too noisy." The innkeeper thought for a moment. "Got it. I'll contact someone for you, and I should be able to take you to see it tomorrow." "Thank you." Herag placed 5 silver coins on the table. The innkeeper smiled as he collected them. No need to be so polite. Dinner was quickly served with a pot of stewed meat. Herag didn't recognize the side dish. It was a type of leafy green vegetable he hadn't seen before. There was also a plate of pumpkin pancakes, still warm, indicating they were freshly made. In the middle of the night, Herag noticed that the city of Ryan didn't have a curfew. Even at such a late hour, people were still walking around on the streets, and a few drunkards were making loud noises. The next morning, Herag opened his eyes. He sensed that the innkeeper had received someone, who appeared to be the person regarding the house rental. But since Herag wasn't up yet, the guest waited downstairs. When Herag came upstairs, the innkeeper immediately approached and introduced, "This is Mr. Jellant, looking to rent a quiet yard here. This is Colin, who has many properties in the western part of the city and can show you around." Colin wore a headscarf, had a round face and a large belly, probably weighing nearly 300 pounds. When he smiled, his eyes narrowed to slits. To Herag, he said, "Mr. Jellant, I have properties ranging from 10 silver coins to 10 gold coins per month. Which price range are you looking for?" 10 gold coins a month? That's quite expensive. Herag hadn't expected properties to be so costly. After considering, he said, "Within 1 gold coin, preferably quiet." Colin's small eyes darted around. "I understand. I think Mr. Jellant might like this place." His carriage was waiting outside, and Herag got on to head west. The carriage passed through several streets and a market area, crossed 2 main roads, and finally arrived at the destination. This was a residential district, but the houses had larger yards, and the distances between the yards were relatively far. Colin explained, "This is the wealthy district. You won't see any vagrants here, and soldiers guard the entrance. Soldiers patrol daily, so you won't have to worry about drunkards barging into your home unexpectedly. It's very quiet here. This yard's monthly rent is 1 gold coin. Although it's somewhat expensive, it perfectly fits Mr. Jellant's requirements. What do you think?" Herag observed the surroundings. Indeed, it was very quiet, with little foot traffic. He entered the yard to take a look. This yard had 3 houses, which were clean inside, indicating they were regularly cleaned. Herag inspected each place and found no issues, so he said, "We'll take this one. Rent it for 3 months first." Since subsequent arrangements were uncertain, he rented for 3 months first and would assess later. Colin didn't expect him to decide so readily, and his eyes crinkled with laughter. "Okay, no problem. Would Mr. Jellant need a maid to do laundry and cook? I can arrange that for just 10 silver coins a month." "Sure, please handle it for me." Herag didn't want to spend time on such matters, so he left it to Colin to manage. It was just spending some money, and he didn't mind Colin earning a bit more, since time was more important to him. By that afternoon, Herag had completed the paperwork and moved into the yard. Colin worked quickly, and a woman in her 30s named Judy soon reported for duty. She was from the Ryan slums. Though not young and pretty, she was skilled at managing household chores. Herag specifically requested this because he was wary of Colin sending a young, attractive, but ineffective woman. Colin understood immediately and selected Judy, a competent worker, grasping Herag's core needs. After moving in, Herag designated the largest house as his living quarters. The other 2 slightly smaller houses, he assigned the left one to Ed and Judy for their living use. It had 4 rooms, sufficient for them. The small right house was marked as off-limits for Ed and Judy, as it was Herag's magic potion experimentation space. Life quickly settled into a routine. Judy handled the purchasing of supplies Herag needed, while Ed drove the carriage to transport supplies, also tending to the horses daily. Herag stood in one of the small house's rooms, where magic potion equipment was neatly organized. As he did in Moonlight Forest, he divided the room into sections for different stages of magic potion refining. He meticulously followed the experimental protocols taught by Larry, strictly adhering to those standards to date, and having Shenlan likewise rigorously monitor himself. 100 milliliters of pure water, 30 milliliters of mist tree man juice, 10 grams of dragon's tooth grass powder, 3 drops of poisonous violet juice, 5 drops of mandala juice. This was a magic potion formula inferred by Shenlan, designed to accelerate Herag's meditation speed, a custom formula tailored based on Herag's constitution and meditation method. Herag checked the formula. "These are all basic magic potion materials, and I have them." Before leaving, his space ring contained an assortment of basic magic potion materials from Larry, ensuring no shortage for practice afterward. Herag prepared the corresponding materials according to the formula. 30 milliliters of mist tree man juice. He retrieved a branch from the space ring, taken from the mist tree man. To extract the juice, Herag needed to utilize magic power to draw it out. He picked up a test tube, then began channeling a stream of magic power into the branch to pull the juice from it. The pale yellow juice quickly seeped from the branch, drop by drop, into the test tube. Watching the measurement, Herag stopped drawing when it reached just over 30 milliliters and placed the branch back. 10 grams of dragon's tooth grass powder. Herag took out a delicate balance scale and a stalk of dragon's tooth grass from the space ring. Processing dragon's tooth grass powder was a bit tricky. It needed to be thoroughly dried and then ground to powder. During roasting, the temperature couldn't be too high or it would deactivate key components of the dragon's tooth grass. Too low, and moisture wouldn't be effectively removed. This issue was easily solved by Herag, who could now manipulate fire energy particles. He set up a beaker over asbestos mesh, then used magic power to gather fire energy particles to ignite a small flame. With Shenlan's assistance, he could precisely control the temperature, slowly roasting the dragon's tooth grass. 10 minutes later, Herag timely dispersed the fire energy particles and extinguished the flames. He took out a medicine pestle and ground the dragon's tooth grass in the beaker into powder, then accurately measured out 10 grams of dragon's tooth grass powder using a balance scale, placed it into a test tube, and set it aside for use. For the next 2 hours, Herag was busy processing these magic potion materials. After processing them, he began the formal magic potion refining process. Herag poured the extracted Mist Tree Man juice into a reaction bottle, then infused magic power until the juice started to emit white smoke. The white smoke began as thin wisps and quickly erupted into a small mushroom cloud. At this moment, Herag immediately dripped in poisonous violet juice and mandala juice. The mushroom cloud instantly turned purple and then quickly retracted back into the reaction bottle. The originally light yellow Mist Tree Man juice now turned grass green. Herag then added the dragon's tooth grass powder, continuing to infuse magic power. This process lasted a little longer, requiring a continuous infusion of magic power for 20 minutes. Although the time was long, the magic power consumption was not much, only consuming 8% of Herag's magic power. The dragon's tooth grass powder danced in the grass-green solution and began to continuously decompose and merge into the solution with the infusion of magic power. After 20 minutes, all the dragon's tooth grass powder had dissolved into the solution, and the grass-green solution turned back to light yellow. Herag shook the reaction bottle, and the solution's color turned sky blue. This color is good. According to the refining process provided by Shenlan, the sky blue solution indicated the magic potion was successfully refined. Herag poured the finished magic potion into a test tube and then said, "Shenlan, check if this magic potion can speed up my meditation." Analyzing and checking. Herag only needed to infuse magic power into the solution, and Shenlan could begin analyzing the components. Unlike before, when he needed to apply herbs on his skin to detect components. After checking, the potion does not possess the effect of speeding up the primary meditation. The properties of dragon's tooth grass and poisonous violet juice conflicted in this magic potion. Although these two components can complement each other, it's recommended to replace poisonous violet juice with the root juice of demon flower. A few minutes later, Shenlan provided the analysis result. Herag pondered. It seems that the deduced formula is indeed not 100% accurate. The characteristics of these magic potion materials vary across different formulas. Without actual experimentation, no one knows the real effect. Even Shenlan's deductions are based on existing data. He was not discouraged and continued to improve the formula as per Shenlan's suggestions, since he had plenty of demon flowers. Demon flower is considered a high-tier magic potion material, generally used as the main ingredient, but in this formula, it only serves as an auxiliary ingredient. If it were regular magic potion research, it certainly wouldn't be crafted like this, but Shenlan's suggestions were tailored to Herag's specific situation. With so many demon flowers in his space ring, it was just right for use. After modifying the formula, Herag experimented again, and 5 hours passed by this time. "Shenlan, check if this magic potion can speed up my meditation," Herag said, holding a test tube containing a black-purple solution, which was the result after the improved formula. Analyzing and checking. 5 minutes later, Shenlan provided the result. After checking, the potion can speed up the meditation speed of the Starry Sky meditation technique. The method of use and dosage. Mix 1 milliliter of this potion with 200 milliliters of pure water, and the subject will speed up their meditation speed after consumption. Experiment successful. Herag felt a bit excited. This was his first self-developed magic potion formula, bringing him a sense of accomplishment. After the excitement, he quickly calmed down and continued to ask, "Shenlan, does consuming this potion have any side effects?" After checking, the side effect is that the subject's desire will increase. "It's recommended to release it appropriately," Shenlan replied. Herag was speechless. It's such a side effect. It must be due to the demon flower. After contemplating for a while, he decided to use the potion. The side effect was minimal and almost negligible, and solving it was very simple. "Shenlan, name this potion Starry Sky Potion." Herag named the potion. Unfortunately, this potion only works for him. Shenlan customized it based on his constitution and his meditation method, so it won't be effective if others use it, making it impossible to market and sell. Named, recorded in the database. After naming it, Herag took some pure water to prepare a dose. The Starry Sky Potion was dripped into the pure water, quickly spreading like ink, turning the entire cup of pure water black-purple in a blink. He picked up the potion, took a small sip, and held it in his mouth. "Shenlan, check again if the Starry Sky Potion has any issues or if the results match the previous detection." To be safe, Herag had Shenlan check once more. After checking, the results are consistent with the previous ones, Shenlan confirmed. With the result, Herag swallowed it. He didn't continue to drink, but waited to see if there were any changes. The body showed no discomfort. He tried meditating and found the meditation speed indeed slightly increased. Half an hour later, the body was still very normal. All indicators apart from a slightly elevated adrenaline level were normal. After verifying everything was correct, Herag drank the remaining potion. In an instant, he felt his perception sharpened considerably. Herag could sense energy particles at a greater distance, and the number of energy particles he could sense increased. When he entered meditation, he found that the stars above seemed closer, and his perception was keener. The cumulative effects of these enhancements mean that his meditation speed increased significantly, at least doubled his previous rate. In Herag's mind, the 8th star, which originally required 4 months to complete meditation, according to the original schedule. But with the current speed, it would only take approximately 2 months to complete the meditation. After verifying the potion's effect, Herag hurried to meditate, fully immersing himself. The Starry Sky Potion's effect lasted for 7 hours, conveniently matching the time it took to complete a meditation session. In the morning, Herag slowly opened his eyes. The effect of the Starry Sky Potion was exceptionally good, leaving Herag very satisfied. The only imperfection was a slightly increased heart rate. Of course, for men who often have more desire than strength, this isn't a side effect at all. But Herag, with his physical condition, didn't need this effect, and it became a burden instead. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. The side effect was a bit more significant than he imagined, and his mind kept replaying scene from the night at Count Huan's, which he found somewhat difficult to suppress.